A hero named Chronogaius lies broken on a battlefield, vowing revenge, surrounded by the bodies of his fallen comrades. As the man responsible stands over his grim victory, a villain who just smirks, surprised Chrono is even still breathing, but Chronogaius glares back, his title as Sword Saint the only thing he has left. This man mocks him, calling the sight pathetic, pointing out that Chrono can't even use mana and his power level is a joke, but the fallen hero doesn't give a damn about any of that, instead offering up his fame in the world in a desperate plea. However, their attention is suddenly pulled to a woman among the dead who begins to stir. This woman, Hashira, begins to push herself up from the ground, her eyes glowing with a terrifying red light as she snarls, and Chrono absolutely loses it, demanding to know what the villain did to her. His mind flashes back to a happier memory. This day he left for this very battle, when Hashira wished him well and told him to be careful, and he promised her that he would be. But back in the present, she's crawling toward him like a monster, a sight that completely shatters what's left of Chrono's composure, as the villain smirks, revealing he simply turned her into an undead. This villain starts his victory speech, asking Chrono if he understands why he lost, but Chrono can only grit his teeth in pure helpless rage, as the man tells him to look at the battlefield for his answer. His grand philosophy is simple. Mana is everything, and those without it are destined to have everything taken from them. Chrono's mind flashes to his hopeful comrades, now just mindless monsters, and the memory of their twisted fate is just devastating. This villain then reveals there are two things in life he truly enjoys. One is an absolute powerhouse, clearly referring to Chrono, and the other is the moment that Powerhouse's heart shatters into pieces. As Chrono screams in pure rage, he's bound by glowing purple chain. This villain watches on, a cold glint in his eye, revealing he's placed an eternal seal on Chrono's mana, cutting him off forever. With that, he declares the power and fame of the Sword Saint officially over, then turns his attention back to the battlefield, a glowing dagger in hand, grabbing the undead Hashira and telling Chrono to watch closely. He holds the blade to her, forcing Chrono to witness his own powerlessness, and then he strikes, ending her undeath right in front of him. Chrono can only watch in absolute horror, his spirit completely shattering, while the villain mocks him, asking why the great Sword Saint isn't saving his wife. This villain stabs Chrono, right through the chest, daring him to do something. But even with a blade sticking out of him, our hero doesn't even flinch, spitting that he couldn't care less about mana anymore. He swears he is going to kill this man, telling him to enjoy that smug look while he still can, because he's going to rip his throat out and slaughter him until there is absolutely nothing left. This villain just smirks, saying, "As you wish," then slashes Chrono across the chest, cutting his threat short. This villain looks down on him with pure contempt, then decides to put on one last show, cutting through the remaining undead with absolute ease, declaring weakness a sin and telling Chrono he's lost the right to speak, before turning the rest of the mindless horde on itself, forcing Chrono to watch his former comrades tear each other apart, a final, horrifying spectacle of his complete failure. Chrono's mind just shatters at the sight as the villain finally introduces himself as Gilgran O'Proud, telling him to remember that name in the underworld as everything fades to black. As Chrono's life fades, he reflects on losing everything when suddenly he's pulled into a strange, ethereal space, leaving him completely confused about what's happening. Even Gilgran is surprised until a new voice comments on Chrono's noisy defiance and a shadowy entity appears, saying it likes his wretchedness. Chrono stares in shock, demanding to know what this thing is, trying to process if it's a monster or some kind of ogre. This entity points out that even as a Tier 7 Sword Saint, he was no match for Gilgran, then asks the million-dollar question, does he want revenge? Because this mysterious being is offering him that exact chance. This entity offers to grant him a temporary life and power, even creating a flaw in Gilgran's eternal seal. But Chrono can barely process the offer, questioning what any of it even means, because the deal is simple. For 3 minutes, he'll get a new body with power far beyond his old self, and his only mission is to drive his blade straight through Gilgran's heart. Still reeling, Chrono demands to know what this thing wants and how it knows about his enemy, but the being says there's no choice. He must kill the necromancer for Hashira's soul. And just like that, Chrono snaps back into a body, gasping for air. He's suddenly much younger, standing over a field of defeated foes. Totally disoriented, he looks around trying to figure out where he even is, until he realizes this is the exact spot where he died and he's actually come back. Chrono panics, realizing he's been shoved into some kid's body, remembering the entity's promise of a so-called opportunity, and he immediately curses that thing for the obvious catch, staring down at his new completely powerless hands. He tries to summon his power but finds he can't use any mana, wondering how in the hell this is supposed to be a second chance, when a voice suddenly calls out, drawing his attention. Two of Gilgran's goons spot him, but just write him off as a brat. This leader doesn't care though. Survivors are survivors, and Lord Gilgran's orders are to eliminate everyone left standing. With Gilgran's name on his mind, Chrono's eyes burn with pure rage, as the goon charges forward, ready to end the little shit right there. But Chrono's body moves on pure instinct, dodging the attack, his footwork so clean it actually catches the thugs off guard. This leader admits the kid has skills, but Chrono knows it's not enough, because this new body is just too damn weak to even swing a sword properly. This goon smirks, telling him that fancy moves are useless without any real power, echoing Gilgran's own philosophy that weakness itself is a sin. That single phrase triggers a flood of horrifying memories for Chrono. reminding him of the man who took everything, all in the name of power. He remembers his vow, deciding mana doesn't matter because no matter what happens, he will kill Gilgran. This goons are completely caught off guard by his sudden change as a massive wave of golden energy explodes from Chrono's body, and he screams, struggling to handle the sudden surge of power, while glowing chains of pure energy begin to form around him, wrapping around his arms with incredible force. This resulting blast sends the thugs flying back in shock, leaving Chrono standing in a swirling vortex of golden flames, realizing with a start that he can use mana again, and it's unbelievably strong. This thugs are completely floored, wondering how a kid could possibly have this much mana, but their leader just scoffs, deciding a brat is still a brat no matter how strong he seems, and he charges forward, ready to end this right now, while Chrono's eyes just glow with cold resolve. He unleashes a single devastating slash of pure energy, which tears through the charging goons in an instant. This attack carves a massive trench in the ground, leaving nothing behind, and Chrono himself seems a little shocked by the raw power. But that surprise quickly turns into a grim smile, because he may not understand what's happening, but he really doesn't care. He just stands there, sword in hand, soaking in all this new power, and with a twisted grin, he promises to kill that bastard Gilgran. His mind flashes back to the moment he died when that shadowy thing appeared, asking if he wanted revenge, offering a temporary life with one simple mission: drive a blade through Gilgran's heart. And just like that, he was brought back to the land of the living, just in time for the rest of Gilgran's goons to charge him down. Chrono meets their attack with a single glowing slash of his own, cutting them down before they even knew what hit them, leaving the last survivor absolutely terrified of this monstrous kid. This last goon screams at his men to stop hesitating and just kill the kid, so the whole squad charges in at once, but Chrono easily sidesteps their clumsy attacks, weaving through their strikes like they're standing still. This thugs are completely stunned, unable to land a single hit, so Chrono decides to end it with one of his old sword arts, unleashing a massive wave of energy that tears through them all. He's fueled by the entity's promise of revenge for his wife's soul, just as a massive horned warrior appears on the battlefield, sighing as he looks down at the mess Chrono just made. With the last of the goons dealt with, Chrono finally takes a breath, still reeling from the sheer force he just unleashed, recognizing his own sword arts but not the insane mana behind them. This new power is on a completely different level, and he remembers the entity's promise to break the seal on his mana for 3 minutes a day. So that's the catch: a 3-minute power-up once a day, which brings back the horrifying memory of his own death, but he decides the time limit doesn't matter in the slightest. Judging by the fresh chaos, Gilgran can't have gone far, and he swears he'll find him. Something suddenly catches his eye, but just as he's basking in the power, his body seizes up. His hand goes completely numb, forcing him to drop his sword in confusion as an intense pain suddenly rips through him, and he realizes all that incredible mana is just vanishing. This 3-minute timer is up, leaving him powerless on the ground, and he can't even manage to stay conscious from the backlash as his vision finally fades to black. That's when a new voice pipes up, annoyed that someone is still alive, complaining he'll get in trouble for not finishing off this kid named Sieg. As Chrono blacks out, he starts hearing strange voices around him, a couple of people scheming while someone's father is away, and their plan is simple: make sure this kid named Sieg is gone for good. This next thing he knows, he's waking up in the middle of a forest, hearing someone humming a tune nearby, just before he's thrown to the ground, completely tied up. 2 guys stand over him, calling him a disgrace for not being able to use mana, and the leader smirks, promising that this time Sieg is going to die. It finally clicks for Chrono. Sieg is the name of this body he's in, and it turns out his own family just dumped him here to be eaten. Chrono realizes this kid Sieg was basically trash to his own family, and to make things worse, they're pouring monster bait all over him, with the leader smirking that some beasts will keep him company soon. But Chrono just coldly demands they untie these ropes, which the guy just laughs off, asking if he's begging for his life, so Chrono, completely unfazed, just repeats the demand, telling them one last time to untie him. When a massive surge of power suddenly erupts from his body, sending the other guy into a panic, telling his brother they need to go, but the leader scoffs, asking what he's so scared of. It's just manaless Sieg. This other guy starts to panic over Chrono's sudden change, but his brother isn't having it, saying a Gilgran can't show that kind of defiance while mocking Sieg to his face. Suddenly, the cowardly brother gets blasted back by an unseen force, which is more than enough to send him running for the hills. Chrono just glares, his eyes glowing with that same intense power, as the brother screams insults while fleeing, telling Sieg to just die already. Chrono calmly watches them go, committing their names to memory, trying to piece together why they called him Monolith Sieg. But hearing Gilgran's name again just fuels his resolve, and he decides he'll get answers later. First, he needs to break these ropes. He's barely processed their betrayal when a massive shadow falls over him, cast by a drooling, multi-eyed rhino beast that's clearly hungry. Chrono immediately recognizes the monster, realizing his family left him as bait for the master of the forest. This beast charges forward, ready to turn him into a smear on the ground, and Chrono knows this weak body can't survive a single hit. But just as the horn is about to connect, something changes. He's suddenly free from the ropes, kneeling in the dirt, and with a roar he launches himself at the beast, landing a solid punch to its jaw. This impact sends a shock through him, and he realizes he still can't use any mana. He desperately tries to tap into that insane mana again, barely dodging as the beast slams into the ground, leaving him bleeding and completely outmatched. It's no use. He can't even take down a single monster in this body, and his mind flashes back to his wife and comrades calling his name, a memory twisted by the entity who brought him back. But snapping back to reality, he decides none of that matters, because he is going to kill that bastard no matter what. Fueled by nothing but pure rage, he charges the beast again. While back at the Gilgran estate, life goes on as usual. Back at the estate, two of Gilgran's sons are pacing the halls, wondering why their father still hasn't returned, when they spot a few others looking seriously concerned, and immediately ask what's going on, getting the news that the cleanup squad was completely wiped out, which is obviously not what they wanted to hear, and they can't imagine who could have done it, since the culprit apparently hasn't been found. But the cowardly brother whispers that's where they abandoned Sieg, and the other one starts putting the pieces together. This older brother scoffs, sure that Sieg knowing anything is totally irrelevant, while the other one calls out, thinking their father has finally returned. But the cowardly brother is still worried, second-guessing their decision to leave Sieg for dead, so the leader just screams at him to shut up about it. He continues his rant, calling Sieg a worthless brat, when a massive blast of energy rips right through the wall, sending him flying across the room before he can even react. He hits the ground hard, completely taken out by the sudden attack, and his brother just screams his name, staring at the figure in the doorway, absolutely terrified and demanding to know what the hell just happened. Chrono stands in the doorway, telling his brothers they got sloppy, and he's brought a little souvenir, the skull of that rhino beast. He's got a few questions, but first, he's here to thank them, leaving the whole room wrecked with the arrogant brother already down. His surviving brothers are just frozen, staring at the absolute mess he made, while Chrono realizes he somehow tapped into that insane power again. Better yet, there's none of that crippling backlash from before, making him wonder if it's tied to the time limit or some other trigger. But he pushes that thought aside for now, focusing on the task at hand. He just stands there, skull in hand, letting his brothers soak in the terror. A few more brothers show up, completely floored to see Sieg alive, but Chrono couldn't care less about their shock, deciding over thinking this is a total waste of time. He has one goal, finding Gilgran, and he demands answers now, leaving the guys sputtering, completely lost for words when someone suddenly steps in to stop him. It's a young girl pleading for young Master Sieg to stop this, but Chrono just glares, not about to be interrupted. She looks absolutely terrified, trying to get through to him, reminding him he's supposed to get along with his brothers. Chrono's rage is cut short by her sudden appearance as she and other servants bow, apologizing for his behavior, and a butler quickly grabs him to drag him away from the scene, leaving his other brothers just standing there in total shock. They can only stare at their unconscious sibling, wondering what just happened, and later that night, the estate is finally quiet again. But the girl who stopped him is now in his room, clearly upset. She scolds him for causing such a massive scene in front of everyone, warning that his brothers will absolutely get him back for this, but Chrono isn't listening, just clenching his fist in silent fury. Chrono just dismisses her, demanding to know who she is, but she warns him that in this house, power is everything, and if his brothers catch him while he can't use mana, he's finished. He finally gets it. The nickname Manaless Sieg wasn't just an insult, and her pained expression confirms it's the absolute truth. This maid explains she's watched over him for years, seeing all the grueling, bloody effort he put into his training, and she felt his sorrow at being unable to turn mana into magic power. She explains that mana is the life force inside every human being, but only a gifted few can actually refine it into usable power for combat. She explains that while his brothers are powerful, Sieg has always had zero mana, and she brings him some tea, clearly pitying his whole situation. This maid says everyone here despises him, even giving him this tiny room, and Chrono is just completely thrown by her sudden concern, trying to process this unexpected kindness. She then starts pointing out his old scars, naming which brother gave him each one, remembering every single injury he's ever received in this house. With tears in her eyes, she says all she wants is his safety, but Chrono just stares into the distance, completely silent for a moment, before saying he just lost his cool and will be more careful now. He takes the tea, and she seems to finally calm down a bit, so Chrono just apologizes for worrying her, playing the part of the meek Sieg, and she accepts his apology, but something is clearly still on her mind when a sudden thought seems to hit her. She asks how he possibly got the upper hand against his brothers without any mana. Chrono realizes she's right, she didn't see him use any magic, because he can't exactly explain he's a reincarnated sword saint using old combat skills. Before he can come up with a lie, she assumes he just used some kind of dirty trick, and he just rolls with it, admitting it was basically cheating anyway, which makes her sigh, saying she understands, given how he's always been treated. Chrono points out that in this house, no one can complain about a cheap shot, and just as he's about to ask about Gilgran, they're interrupted. A guard announces that his father has returned and summoned him. This word father clearly throws Chrono for a loop for a moment. He's led right to a massive guarded door, where Gilgran himself is waiting to greet his worthless son. Chrono finally sees him, the name echoing in his head, and Gilgran seems genuinely shocked that he's even standing there, but coldly orders him to come forward anyway. Chrono finally faces the master of the house, his ultimate target. Chrono is absolutely shaking with rage, flashing back to the deal he made for this very revenge. He thinks this is perfect, a golden opportunity, deciding to just kill Gilgran right here and now. But as he stands there ready to make his move, his plan hits a pretty major snag because he can't summon a single drop of that power. Gilgran just smirks, saying he called him for a reason, asking if it's true he actually took down his own brother. This maid looks on, terrified, as Chrono just glares. This maid immediately starts begging for mercy on Chrono's behalf, but Gilgran just glares down, ordering her into silence. He says he's not actually here to punish Chrono, but he is curious how a manaless kid managed the feat. To test him, Gilgran summons some seriously dark energy, manifesting a massive multi-headed beast from the shadows. This maid recognizes it as a Hydra undead, as Gilgran explains that in this house, power is everything. He then challenges Chrono to show him what he's got, and Chrono just stands his ground, ready for the test. This maid freaks out, realizing the monster's mana is off the charts, screaming that it's a Calamity-class beast and he needs to run now, as the massive Hydra looms over them with its multiple heads, and it immediately lunges forward to attack. But Chrono stands his ground, shielding the terrified maid. He quickly analyzes the situation, realizing Gilgran has juiced this thing up way beyond a normal Hydra, and admits to himself that without mana, this fight is impossible. He considers using that unknown power again, but has no idea what the backlash might be this time. After a moment of hesitation, he makes his choice, deciding he doesn't give a damn about the risks. Chrono decides he doesn't care what happens to his body as long as he can tap into that power one more time. This Hydra lunges forward to finish him off, and the maid screams, thinking it's all over, when a blinding flash of energy slices right through the beast. This sheer force of the attack is absolutely immense, revealing Chrono with glowing eyes, having unleashed it all. Gilgran actually looks a little intrigued by the display, while a dark, sinister energy now swirls around Chrono's body, and the maid can only stare, stunned by what she's seeing. This maid is in absolute shock, sensing his power surge to an impossible level, and even Gilgran wonders where the hell this mana suddenly came from. But instead of being worried, he just looks amused by the whole thing, realizing Chrono isn't even flinching at his own immense pressure. Chrono, meanwhile, is done playing games, ready to end this right now, and with a crazed look, he declares it's finally Gilgran's turn. His father just laughs, finding this little rebellion interesting, as Chrono Hour charges straight for the throne, wreathed in dark power, and the maid can only watch in horror, trying to call out to him, screaming for her young master to stop before it's too late. Chrono warns the maid to stay back, his eyes locked on the throne, threatening to kill her if she dares get in his way. This sheer coldness of his words leaves her absolutely stunned, and he just knocks her out before she can even react, not even a flicker of remorse on his face. His eyes reopen, now completely committed to the fight. Gilgran, on the other hand, seems genuinely impressed by this new fire, admitting that kind of power is what it took to beat his Hydra. He finds this sudden change of character impressive and asks for his next move, and Chrono screams that he's going to kill him right here, right now. He lunges forward, sword ready to strike, completely consumed by rage and that dark power, his only goal to end Gilgran right here and now. But his father effortlessly rises to meet the attack, unleashing a massive wave of his own immense power, which sends Chrono flying back across the room. He's stunned by the insane level of strength he's up against, as Gilgran coldly tells him not to look away. Before Chrono can even react, his father is on him, landing a devastating kick that sends him reeling. Chrono barely manages to block the follow-up attack, but Gilgran is already charging again, sword wreathed in dark energy, bringing it down in a brutal overhead strike. This impact sends Chrono flying backwards once more, leaving him completely overwhelmed on the ground. His father calls him weak, but admits this new power is a huge improvement, wondering if his own bloodline has finally awakened in his son. Chrono just seethes, completely outmatched for now, when a sudden familiar feeling washes over him, flashing back to his death as the Sword Saint, realizing this power feels exactly the same. Chrono realizes it's not just that Gilgran is strong, there's something fundamentally twisted about his mana. He understands that at this rate, no matter what he does, his Sword Saint instincts are screaming that only death awaits him. This thought of losing again, just like in his past life, is infuriating, especially without ever getting his revenge. Gilgran mockingly asks if he has anything to say, but Chrono stays silent. His father just smirks, calling that a fine answer, reminding him of the family creed: victory is justice, weakness is a crime. And since Chrono proved his justice by killing the Hydra, Gilgran will overlook the whole trying to murder him thing. Gilgran actually offers him a reward, asking what he desires, which just infuriates Chrono. He's being looked down on again, and he flashes back to everyone he lost in his past life. He reminds himself that he's already died once before, deciding to stop being reckless and focus on his real goal, which is to expose every single thing about this man. So, swallowing his rage, he addresses his father, asking to see the undead that Gilgran controls. This request clearly catches the old man off guard, but Chrono just stares back, dead serious. Gilgran actually seems to consider the strange request, before simply telling Chrono to follow him. He leads the kid through the dark halls of the estate, opening a door to a hidden stone staircase leading down. As they descend, Gilgran asks why he's suddenly so interested in the undead, and Chrono feeds him a story about wanting to learn how to be strong like his father. His dad seems to buy it, but then notices Chrono is struggling to keep up. Chrono just brushes it off, saying he's tired, but he's clearly in agony. Turns out the backlash from that power is hitting him hard, feeling just like when he died before, and he desperately fights to stay conscious, thinking of the men he lost in his past life. He fights to stay conscious, his mind drifting to Hannah, flashing back to a formal party from his past life. His wife, Hannah, approaches him, but he barely seems to register her presence. She excitedly asks what he thinks of her new dress, and he just bluntly says who cares about clothes. Hana is, of course, not impressed by that answer, telling him he can't just be so dismissive. She reminds him that as the Sword Saint's wife, she has to look the part for everyone, and she fixes his own collar, calling him perfect. He's lost in the memory of Hannah's smile, a moment from his past life he's clinging to, just before everything went to hell. Back in the present, he's fighting through the pain, apologizing to her for failing to protect her, and vowing to finally take Gilgran down. His father stops, announcing they've arrived, standing before a massive set of doors, which Gilgran pushes open into a vast, dark chamber, and what Chrono sees inside leaves him horrified. This chamber below is just a swarming sea of glowing undead, and Chrono is absolutely speechless at the sheer scale of it. He's just frozen, trying to process the nightmare before him, as Gilgran explains that the dead are merely puppets without will. But he mentions that every now and then, he finds an interesting one, and as Chrono looks closer, his eyes widen in absolute horror. Gilgran points out a specific undead woman who weeps endlessly, and Chrono realizes with sickening dread that it's Hannah. His father just finds it fascinating that she's still searching for something, then grabs her head and mockingly asks Chrono what's wrong. Gilgran shoves Hannah's undead face forward, taunting Chrono to take a closer look, and the kid is just paralyzed, staring at what his wife has become. His fist clenches so hard it starts to bleed, pure rage taking over, his mind screaming that he's going to kill this absolute monster. He grits his teeth, fighting back tears of pure fury, forcing himself to calm down and promising Hannah he'll avenge her. He swears to uncover the secret of Gilgran's power first, no matter the cost, when suddenly a massive surge of energy erupts from the horde below, leaving Chrono stunned by the sudden commotion. But his father just calmly states that the dead have no will. Gilgran then points out one of his more interesting undead, a woman who weeps endlessly as if she's waiting for someone, and Chrono's world completely shatters when he realizes it's Hannah, but his father just mockingly asks what's wrong, shoving her undead face forward for a closer look, and the twisted version of his wife reaches out, trying to speak. Later that night, Chrono is wide awake in his room, completely haunted by the horrifying image of what she's become, staring into a lantern's flame and whispering her name, swearing on his life that he will make Gilgran pay for this. This next morning at the estate, Chrono gets a knock at his bedroom door, and a maid enters, calling for the young master. She's surprised to find him already up and dressed, just sitting by the window, lost in thought. As she prepares some tea for him, she can't help but feel a little uneasy, flashing back to his terrifying threat from yesterday. But Chrono actually apologizes for his behavior, and she just marvels at how he's finally awakened his incredibly powerful mana. This maid is apparently delighted by his newfound power, but Chrono's mind is locked on one target, Gilgran. He's figured out that simple tricks won't work, not against that bizarre and sinister mana his father wields. Chrono needs more information but gets interrupted by the maid, who's now crying because he's ignoring her. She insists she was only doing what was best for them, and he quickly explains he was just lost in thought. She doesn't buy it, convinced he hates her now, so he just cuts to the chase, asking what she knows about Gilgran's mana. This maid plays dumb, claiming she knows nothing at all, but then admits she felt Gilgran's mana too, like it was sucking the life right out of her. Chrono realizes he wasn't the only one who felt that sinister energy, thinking about how mana is supposed to be pure life force, yet his father's power is a complete perversion of that very concept. This maid interrupts his train of thought, worried about something happening tomorrow, wishing they would postpone a trial until he's recovered, which is the first Chrono has heard of any trial at all. She's shocked he doesn't know about the family's exam for 10-year-olds, leaving Chrono to wonder what this Gilgran family training could possibly be. Chrono couldn't care less, telling the maid he has no time for that crap, but she insists it's a mandatory trial for every 10-year-old in the family, explaining that failure to participate or pass means immediate exile, because the weak are simply not welcome in the Gilgran household. He starts wondering why his father is so obsessed with these power displays, realizing it must be connected to the secret of his sinister strength. Suddenly, a new plan clicks into place for him, and he asks if passing this exam will get him closer to Gilgran. She confirms it, saying he could even join the guard unit under his father's command, which is all Chrono needs to hear to know exactly what he has to do. This day of the trial arrives, with all the family's kids gathered in the courtyard, and a couple of familiar bullies are already watching the crowd, when Chrono strolls in with the maid, immediately catching their eye. He walks with a confidence they've definitely never seen from him before, leaving the bullies completely stunned to even see him show up. They can't believe Manaless Sieg is actually planning to take the trial, with the main one scoffing that he expected the kid to just accept exile. He's convinced Chrono's recent power display was a fluke and he's getting cocky, while the maid nervously tries to talk him out of it, but Chrono just brushes her off, telling her he'll be fine. Internally, Chrono admits he has no idea what this kid's body can handle, but getting exiled is absolutely not an option right now, because this trial is his one real chance to get close to Gilgran, so he vows to pass, expose that monster, and finally save Hannah. Just as he's stealing his resolve, a familiar voice cuts in. It's Zack and his crew, rolling up to start some trouble, acting all surprised that Monolith Sieg even bothered to show his face, and he just keeps running his mouth, calling Chrono a coward, getting right up in his personal space to mock him for even trying, but he doesn't even finish his sentence before Chrono grabs him by the collar. Zack just scoffs, asking if that's supposed to be a punch, but Chrono's eyes just glow as he calls him annoying, and then he absolutely decks the guy right in the jaw. This other kids are totally stunned by the sudden thud as Zack stumbles back, completely dazed from the impact, before collapsing face first into the dirt, out cold. Everyone's just staring, wondering how Sieg just dropped him, while Chrono casually says he won't be waking up for a while, leaving the other bullies speechless at his sudden confidence, when a man in a suit steps out, announcing the entertainment is over. This proctor steps forward, announcing the trial is officially starting, and Chrono just smirks, ready for whatever they throw at him. All the kids are gathered in the massive courtyard, waiting for instructions, as the man addresses the 23 of them as elite candidates. Lined up in formation, they all listen intently to the rules, confirming in unison that they understand what's at stake. This proctor then pulls out a document to read the official guidelines, explaining this exam will test their strength to prove their worth to the family. A top performance could even earn them a spot in the elite guard unit under Gilgrand's direct command, a ruthless squad that handles everything from protection to assassinations. This proctor explains that passing this exam is the only way in, and the test is just survival on a mountain full of monsters. Only those who make it back alive get to move on, and he casually mentions that kids die every single year. Just as they're processing that, a new voice cuts in with an extra rule, because of course Lord Gilgrand himself has decided to show up. This other kids are terrified, immediately bowing to him, but Chrono just stands there, staring daggers at the man. His eyes are practically glowing with pure, unfiltered hatred, flashing back to that horrifying image of what he did to Hannah. Chrono grits his teeth, ready to crush this trial, but Gilgrand's presence stops everyone in their tracks, forcing all the other kids to their knees in fear, while Chrono just stands there, glaring at his father, who announces a little change to the rules. An undead escort, explaining each kid has to protect one with their life, calling it a rehearsal for guarding him personally. And Chrono's silence is just dripping with contempt, as the kids are literally chained to their new undead partners. And Gilgrand adds that he's cut off their mana supply too. Gilgrand adds a final twisted rule. The undead can't be resurrected, so they're worth protecting. As Chrono finds himself literally chained to his own undead partner, barely able to contain his disgust for this entire sadistic game, while another kid recoils from his escort, horrified that it's actually crying. Gilgrand just stands there, watching the chaos he's orchestrated, and Chrono's rage is practically radiating off him at this point, before his father finally dismisses them all to go prove their strength. Internally, Chrono makes a vow to pass any trial they throw at him, because his only goal now is to survive this, get strong enough, and finally put an end to Gilgrand for good. While the other kids obediently agree to the terms, Chrono is just seething with pure, unbridled rage, knowing this exam is his only real shot at Gilgrand, and he's ready to do whatever it takes to win. This flashes back to a few days prior, with the maid explaining the family's brutal training, which apparently starts with hunting animals and quickly escalates, all the way to abandoning children to fend for themselves, and she assumes he remembers this lovely childhood trauma, but Chrono just plays it cool when she senses his confusion. Chrono questions why this family is so obsessed with strength, and the maid explains their traditions have been around for decades, but he points out the family itself is basically brand new, which makes their whole martial house reputation feel hollow. He realizes this obsession must be tied to Gilgrand's secrets, but the maid just insists he has to follow the rules, because if Gilgrand doesn't acknowledge him, he's out. She admits she'd be happiest if he could just stay, leaving Chrono to quietly consider the weight of her words. Back in the present, chained to his undead, he simply says, "I know." One of the kids immediately starts whining, demanding a different undead partner. But the proctor explains the decision, and the magical chains are both Gilgrand's doing, and the kid is still worried this thing is going to cost him points, so the proctor just coldly tells him to deal with it himself. That's when Gilgrand cuts in, saying a strong kid wouldn't care which undead he got, and if this one is too weak, he should just leave now, sending the boy into a panic, who immediately changes his tune and swears he'll succeed, earning a cold, calculating stare from his father. Gilgrand finally turns away, telling him to do his best with high expectations, and the kid is suddenly overjoyed to get even a shred of approval. This kid, who was just complaining, tries to get his father's attention, but it's Chrono who steps forward, immediately drawing Gilgrand's gaze. Gilgrand turns to him, asking what it is he wants, and Chrono declares he's going to pass this exam, demanding a spot by his side. He tells his father to look forward to it with absolute confidence, which actually seems to get a flicker of interest from the man. Gilgrand simply tells him to prove it then, before vanishing in a flash of energy. He's just gone, leaving the other kid completely stunned, who immediately starts yelling at Chrono for his blatant disrespect. Chrono just turns to him with a dead-eyed stare, shutting him up instantly. That other kid gets a sudden warning from a girl not to let his undead get scratched, who then threatens to personally end him if he even lays a finger on it. This guy is just completely baffled by this sudden, intense threat, and his brain immediately short-circuits, thinking she's declared him a rival, which he somehow twists into her telling him not to give up. So he just turns around and starts yelling at Chrono to mind his own business. But the proctor cuts everyone off, announcing it's time to get started. Holding a lantern with a purple flame, he declares the first exam will now begin, explaining the special flame was a gift from Gilgrand himself, and it's about to signal the start of their little survival game. This proctor unleashes a massive burst of purple energy, using teleportation magic to scatter all the kids, and in an instant, the entire courtyard is empty. He just stands there, wishing them all good luck, while Hannah watches from a distance, worried for Chrono. Our boy finds himself instantly warped into a dark forest, chained to his undead partner and ready for anything. He quickly realizes they've all been separated, and as they begin to walk, he's already on high alert, sensing someone else nearby who isn't a candidate or a monster. He's barely taken a step when a strange energy appears nearby, materializing into a magical message right in front of him, which lays out the exam rules. Survive 3 days and protect the undead, or you're out. It also helpfully adds that anything goes, even taking out the other kids, a real family-friendly event. Chrono realizes the answer to Gilgrand's obsession with power must lie at the end of this trial, but his thoughts are cut short by the screech of a massive monster overhead, as a huge winged beast descends right on top of them. He's surprised they're showing up so soon, but figures it just saves him the trouble of tracking them down, and as it dives in for the attack, he thinks about his reincarnation, knowing he can't afford to screw up this second chance at life. He knows this trial is the only path to his real goal, and he's determined to pass it as Sieg, no matter what. This winged beast dives straight for him, but Chrono easily dodges, yanking his undead partner out of the way, before slicing the monster clean in two with a single strike. This creature crashes to the ground behind them, leaving Chrono to land and take a quick breath. Turns out all those escort missions from his past life are finally paying off, giving him a serious edge in this twisted game. But before he can even relax, a massive electrified ape bursts from the trees, which immediately tries to flatten him with an electric slam, but Chrono just leaps clear of the attack, annoyed that these monsters keep coming one after another, but he just smirks, calling this a simple warm-up. In the next moment, both beasts are down for the count, leaving Chrono to dust himself off, completely unfazed, and wonder if the proctors are even scoring this part. His thoughts are cut short by someone else rushing in, another candidate who immediately swings at him, and it's the same whiny kid from before, who's surprisingly impressed. This whiny kid immediately confronts Chrono, demanding to know what he wants, and says they can skip the brotherly act because this exam isn't for weaklings, planning to take Chrono out himself since he's just monster bait now, which is exactly the kind of twisted family logic Chrono despises. He throws their might is right rule back in the kid's face, leaving him totally confused, then points out that since this guy attacked first, mercy is off the table. This other candidate is completely stunned as Chrono prepares to fight back, his sword already glowing with a dangerous energy, which sends the whiny kid into a full-blown panic. Chrono just stares him down, promising zero mercy for starting this fight. Chrono promises to show this guy what real power looks like, but his opponent just scoffs at the manaless loser, charging forward with a wild swing of his sword, yelling that Chrono is going to be the first one he takes out, but it's all a feint as he throws a small pouch with his other hand, a cheap trick Chrono immediately sees through, and the pouch explodes right in his face, much to the kid's delight. But when the smoke clears, Chrono is just standing there, completely unfazed, leaving his attacker completely stunned as Chrono closes in, and lands a brutal kick right to the kid's side. This kid goes down hard, wailing from that one solid kick, and realizes Chrono used an afterimage to dodge the whole thing. A trick Chrono says was easy thanks to the forest's humidity. His opponent is just completely lost, yelling that none of this makes sense. But Chrono's seen this type 1,000 times in his past life. He knew from the kid's stance that the sword swing was just a distraction, which sends the guy into a rage, crushing something in his hand, but he's still stuck on the ground, cursing his own failure. His ego is just completely shattered, unable to process the loss, while Chrono just coldly reminds him what he said earlier. Chrono tells the kid his body language is an open book, standing over him after that pathetic attempt at a fight, and tells him to learn something from his obvious tells. This whiny brat can only curse his own weakness from the ground, while Chrono notes that targeting the undead is a classic weakling strategy, but he's not about to fall for such a basic trick, and instantly blocks the kid's last-ditch attack on his undead partner. This dagger shatters and the magical chain on the kid's wrist breaks apart, who can only stare in disbelief as he's officially disqualified. Chrono just tells him it's over and walks away, not giving him a second glance. This whiny kid is left cursing in the dirt, completely defeated, while Chrono just walks away without a second glance. He's already focused on his real mission, knowing he can't afford a single misstep, because his ultimate goal is to kill Gilgrand and save Hannah. As he disappears into the woods, it turns out someone was watching the entire fight, one of the proctors, who notes the first dropout of the exam. He's completely baffled, questioning if that was really Master Sieg, and starts taking notes on the kid's absurdly battle-hardened skills. Elsewhere in the forest, another candidate is taking a break, and it's the intense girl from before, who seems just as frustrated. Her break is cut short by something massive crashing through the trees, and it turns out to be a gigantic, boar-headed monster, which is just her luck, since she's sitting right in its path, realizing immediately that she's stumbled upon an A-rank beast. This monster doesn't waste any time, smashing the ground with a brutal punch, sending both her and her undead partner flying from the shockwave, and she lands hard, completely panicking as she tries to recover. Unfortunately for her, another proctor is watching from the sidelines, already calling the fight, noting that an A-rank is way out of this kid's league, and as the beast charges in for the final blow, she knows it's hopeless. But just as she's about to give up, she refuses to use her undead as a decoy, her mind flashing back to a pretty serious warning. A direct threat from Chrono himself: if the undead gets hurt, he'll personally end her. Back in the present, she's furious but plants her feet, angry at that manaless brat for acting so high and mighty. she twists his threat into a personal challenge from a rival, a test to prove she can handle this impossible task. With the monster right on top of her, she steals her resolve, deciding she'll do it just to prove him wrong. She braces herself, preparing to meet the attack head-on. She plants her feet, ready to meet the charge head-on as the massive beast swings its fist down with full force, and the impact sends her flying backwards, but she somehow manages to parry the blow with her sword, gritting her teeth against the overwhelming power, though the sheer force still knocks her off her feet. This proctor watching from the trees is completely stunned, just as the beast begins to power up even more and she hits the ground hard, her sword flying from her hand. Now wreathed in flames, the monster looms over her, ready to finish it. She's completely frozen, knowing this is the end, as the beast's flaming fist comes crashing down for the kill. But something intercepts the attack at the last possible second. This monster reels back in shock, its entire arm just gone, leaving her to stare, completely baffled by what just happened. Turns out Chrono just appeared out of nowhere to save her, and he's not happy about it, telling her to get that look off her face. With his back to her, he's just glad he made it in time, before scolding her for not recognizing an opponent she couldn't handle. She asks if this is some rival thing, but he just tells her to listen up. He tells her to follow him if she wants to live, leaving her completely stunned on the ground, but her pride kicks in, telling him not to act so high and mighty, and she insists she was about to handle that monster herself, which earns her a completely deadpan stare from Chrono, who just turns around and starts walking away. But he suddenly stops, sensing something is wrong, his gaze locking onto her undead partner, which has a single tear of blood running down its face, and Chrono's expression turns deadly serious. That single tear of blood triggers a flashback for Chrono, reminding him of his vow to save Hannah no matter the cost, a promise that fuels his every single move. Back in the present, the girl he rescued is just confused, wondering if he's got some weird thing for her undead partner, a thought that completely grosses her out. Elsewhere, in a much more luxurious setting, tea is being poured, where an attendant reports to his master about the unusually high number of exam candidates, but this master, Gilgran, just scoffs while watching through a crystal ball, coldly stating that the weak are of no use to him. His attendant notes the B-rank beasts are already a huge challenge, but Gilgran coldly expects only 1 or 2 kids to even survive. This attendant is horrified to see what's on the viewing orb, an A-rank monster that has no business being in this forest. Gilgran just smirks, confirming he's well aware of the situation, and the attendant realizes his master put the beast there himself. Turns out Gilgran did it purely for his own entertainment, leaving his subordinate completely stunned by the casual cruelty. He knows no 10-year-old can possibly survive that power gap, especially considering that monster's unique and deadly ability. Back in the forest, the monster's arm erupts in purple energy, which has another candidate completely freaking out nearby, as its entire limb just instantly grows back from the stump, a regeneration ability so fast it leaves the girl speechless. This new kid realizes they have absolutely no chance of winning, so he just bolts, screaming that they need to run for their lives. Chrono can only watch in disgust at the absolute cowardice, but the monster immediately locks onto the fleeing target, and it smashes the ground with a devastating shockwave, catching the runner off guard and shattering his sword on impact. That coward immediately eats dirt from the shockwave, completely losing his mind in terror, while Chrono roasts him for turning his back in a fight, because that just made the monster switch targets, and it starts crackling with some nasty energy as massive spikes suddenly erupt from its back, which it then fires like a volley of missiles, forcing Chrono to desperately parry the barrage, realizing it can just grow and launch weapons, and the beast is already powering up for round 2. This beast instantly regrows its back spikes, crackling with energy, and Chrono realizes it's already regenerating from the last attack. It immediately fires off another volley of projectiles right at him, forcing Chrono to parry while noting its impossible regeneration speed. He knows this has to be Gilgran's doing, some kind of sick enhancement, and he's getting seriously annoyed by this endless barrage. But then they notice something wholesome. The monster's severed hand is reforming, which sprouts into a whole new smaller copy of the beast. This girl is completely losing it as the clone lands on the ground, while Chrono realizes that holding back won't work on an enemy that just keeps multiplying. Chrono knows his real sword style would work, but it's a dead giveaway, and he's painfully aware the proctors are watching his every move, certain that Gilgran is watching from somewhere too, meaning if they see his unique swordplay, they'll get suspicious. His mind races with the worst-case scenarios, like being found out, or them discovering his true hidden objective. If any of that happens, Hannah's life is on the line. This beast looming over him snaps him out of it, forcing Chrono to refocus on the immediate threat. He knows he can't afford to be distracted for even a second. Chrono steals himself, knowing exactly what he has to do, leaving the coward who ran completely stunned by his sudden power-up. He just calls the kid pathetic and tells him to stay out of the way. With his resolve set, he grips his sword and unleashes a massive wave of pure, untamed energy. This proctor watching from the trees is completely floored by the display, but Chrono knows he can't reveal his true identity here, so he decides to use an unfamiliar sword style as a cover, planning to blow the monster away until nothing's left. As the beast roars, he charges forward to end this. Meanwhile, Gilgran's attendant is watching this whole mess unfold, completely horrified that his master would unleash an A-rank beast, knowing no 10-year-old, not even his own sons, could possibly survive it. But back in the forest, Chrono is already mid-charge, screaming for the monster to bring it on, as the beast opens its mouth to fire a massive energy blast. and Chrono meets it head-on with his own attack. This two beams colliding in a blinding explosion of power, with our boy pouring everything he has into his sword, completely overpowering the monster's attack and engulfing it in light. This other kid can only scream as Chrono's attack engulfs the beast, blasting it with a massive wave of pure energy, which carves a path of destruction straight through the forest. But the sheer force of the blast sends Chrono flying backward, and when the smoke clears, the monster is somehow still standing. He's pissed, realizing he focused too much on countering and failed to finish it, leaving a massive trench in the ground but the target very much alive. This beast just roars as its body instantly starts regenerating again, and Chrono knows his stamina won't hold out against that kind of power. But then the coward Sieg points out something even worse in the distance. Sieg suddenly spots a downed Proctor on the ground, realizing the guy got caught in the monster's last attack. This girl is completely clueless, not even knowing they were being watched, but then the Proctor's eye glows with a strange blue light, and Chrono recognizes it as Gilgrand's magical surveillance. With the camera officially broken, he's finally free to act, unleashing a dark, menacing aura he'd been suppressing. He can now use his true sword style to end this quickly, leaving the other two kids absolutely floored by his power-up. Chrono prepares his real technique, Kiltia Swordsmanship, First Blade Hawkwind. He drops in with his true technique, Hawkwind, as a phantom hawk of pure energy slams into the beast, shredding it with a single brutal strike. Zeke can only watch, completely losing his mind, and we get a quick lesson on Kiltia Swordsmanship, a legendary style whose only master is Chrono Gaius himself. But he's not done, already prepping the fourth blade, unleashing the snake blade to finish the job. His dark energy coils around the monster like a python, and Chrono lands as the beast is finally restrained. Chrono realizes his last attack wasn't strong enough to finish it, so he immediately launches himself forward for a follow-up, preparing the third blade of his Kiltia Swordsmanship, a devastating technique he calls the Rhino Horn. This attack connects with explosive force, seemingly ending the fight, but back in the viewing room, Gilgrand's surveillance orb suddenly cracks, which has his attendant asking if something's wrong, and Gilgrand just stares at the broken feed, completely silent. His annoyance quickly morphs into a very sinister smirk as he dismisses the whole thing, saying it's nothing at all. After all that destruction, the smoke finally begins to clear, and of course, the monster is still standing there, looking barely scratched. Chrono lands, realizing his last attack didn't even phase the thing, and he's getting pissed, knowing he's burned way too much mana already. Looks like he's got no choice but to switch tactics again, but the beast isn't waiting, lunging forward for another round, when suddenly Sieg, the coward, jumps in front with a massive shield of light. Chrono can't believe it, screaming at the kid to get out of the way, but Sieg explains his technique is a wide area defense that drains mana. With that opening, Chrono prepares his real finisher, the Kiltia Second Blade. He unleashes his second blade, Fighting Dog's Cage, trapping the beast inside a massive dome of golden energy, which leaves the monster roaring completely boxed in. Chrono just smirks, knowing he's finally got it cornered, as the beast's core begins to glow brightly from inside its mouth. Turns out his cage lets him pinpoint a magical beast's core, giving him a perfect, unobstructed line for a finishing blow, and with a final declaration, he prepares to slice it in two. His attack lands perfectly, shattering the monster's core instantly, but as he inspects the remains, he finds proof of tampering, confirming Gilgrand was behind this all along. With the fight finally over, the other two kids just stare in disbelief, as Sieg has a full-blown meltdown over a sword style he can't comprehend. He immediately realizes his own standing is now seriously threatened, but Chrono is dealing with a much bigger problem. His body is completely shutting down on him. Turns out, burning that much mana was a predictably bad idea, and he promptly collapses face first into the dirt. This girl immediately rushes over, calling out his name, desperately checking to see if he's even still alive after that, while the monster's corpse just dissolves into black smoke. This beast's corpse dissolves into black smoke, leaving Sieg to stare at Chrono's unconscious body, which triggers a flashback to his mother's brutal lesson, reminding him of his low status as the third wife's son and how he was ordered to succeed at any cost, even if it meant killing his own brothers for glory. Back in the present, that ambition twists his face into a nasty smirk, and suddenly, the scene shifts to a warrior in a field who wakes up completely disoriented, asking where he is, surrounded by his equally confused-looking comrades. We're thrown into a flashback of a brutal battle with undead creatures swarming the field, and the warrior from before finds himself completely surrounded by the horde, screaming in disbelief at his former comrades, now turned into monsters. But through the chaos, he spots a single familiar figure standing calmly, a woman in white, somehow completely untouched by the carnage. He recognizes her as Hannah, looking serene and totally out of place, and she just offers him this sad, knowing smile. Thinking she's safe, he rushes forward to pull her into an embrace, but that moment of relief twists into pure horror as she attacks him, revealing she's one of them as she sinks her teeth right into his neck. That brutal vision ends with teeth sinking into the warrior's neck, and Chrono suddenly jolts awake in a cold sweat. His attendant immediately rushes to his bedside, relieved to see the young master is finally conscious. He tries to sit up, groaning from his bandaged wounds, and immediately asks how long he was out for. Bell tells him it's been 2 days since the exam, as memories of the entire brutal fight come flooding back to him. He confirms that he remembers everything perfectly, but then asks what happened to the undead, leaving Bell totally confused. Bell confirms the other brothers are back, but wonders why he's asking, and Chrono just stays silent, flashing back to the undead from his nightmare. He cuts to the chase, asking if the other kid, Gleeka, made it back. She confirms Gleeka passed, bringing the total number of survivors to 5, and Chrono just assumes the kid rode his coattails to a passing grade. He's just glad Hannah is safe, but before he can finish his thought, Bell drops a bombshell. Only 4 people passed, and Master Sieg wasn't one of them. Chrono is completely floored, not understanding what she's talking about. He argues that he protected his undead and beat a monster, so how could Gleeka pass if he failed? Bell just looks stunned, trying to figure out how to explain this whole mess. And while Chrono's trying to make sense of things, this official results of the exam are being announced elsewhere. An instructor steps out to present the proof of passing, formally congratulating the small group of survivors. He declares that 4 passing this year's brutal test is a magnificent result, which has one of the kids practically bursting with gratitude. Of course, his psycho teammate is just bummed he didn't get to kill more stuff. This third guy in their group just gives him a dead-eyed stare, as they're all granted 3 days of special leave to recover. This kids celebrate their victory, but the instructor just quietly walks away. Meanwhile, the instructor is listening in from behind a door, as one of the other brothers, Helios, corners Gleeka with a smug grin, asking about the rumor that Gleeka took down an A-rank beast, and Gleeka, looking totally caught off guard, just awkwardly agrees. So Helios keeps pressing, impressed he handled a monster that even killed a proctor, and even managed to protect Sieg, asking when he got so damn strong, which has Gleeka scrambling for an excuse about being rivals, claiming he can't just go showing his hand to a competitor. So Helios just shrugs it off, says he doesn't care, and walks away, but his face immediately darkens, knowing there's no way that story is true. Back in the forest, the monster's corpse dissolves, and Gleeka checks to see if Chrono is even alive after passing out. He just stands there for a moment looking at the unconscious kid, and a nasty thought starts to form in his head. His face twists into a truly opportunistic smirk. With Chrono completely helpless, Gleeka makes his move, shattering the chains on the undead with his own sword. He then declares that Chrono lost the fight, claiming he's the one who actually hunted the A-rank beast, and that he was the hero who saved Chrono from the monster. Helios is practically dancing on Sieg's grave, thrilled that he failed. While overlooking the academy courtyard, this family patriarch himself makes an appearance. An instructor approaches him, questioning the official results, insisting there's no way Gleika could have beaten that monster. He reveals the proctor's broken crystal sensed a specific mana signature, a signature that undoubtedly belonged to Lord Sieg. This little inconsistency just makes the Duke flash a sinister grin, and as the instructor backs away, the old man just stares out thoughtfully, realizing one of his sons is far more interesting than he thought. Meanwhile, Gleeka is celebrating his stolen victory in the academy courtyard, already imagining how proud his mother is going to be, and absolutely relishing the thought of Sieg's inevitable rage. He figures it doesn't matter who killed the beast. He's the one with the badge. And just then, he spots his mother calling his name from a distance. He runs over to her, absolutely beaming with excitement, shouting that he passed the exam and brought honor to their family. But his victory speech is cut short by a hand grabbing his face. Out of nowhere, a furious Sieg lands a brutal punch, sending Gleeka flying backwards across the pavement. This punch sends Gleeka flying across the courtyard, crashing him and his mother straight into the fountain. He sputters his way out of the water, totally confused, and looks up to see a furious Sieg standing over him. Sieg smirks, saying he's heard a pretty interesting story and demands Gleeka tell it to him too. Big brother. Gleeka is absolutely paralyzed with fear, unable to speak, as the confrontation draws the attention of the entire academy. Other students start to gather, wondering what's happening, while Sieg just sits on the fountain's edge, asking why he's so quiet. Sieg calmly points out the irony of him failing after taking down an A-rank beast, which has Gleeka sweating bullets while trying to play it cool, but Sieg's eyes glow as he accuses him of stealing credit for the kill, warning him that his next words will decide if he lives or dies. So Gleeka immediately starts denying everything, pleading ignorance, and even gets bold enough to demand proof of the accusation, which earns him another vicious punch right to the jaw, sending him flying backwards through the air once again before he crashes back into the fountain, completely stunned, and Sieg just looms over him, asking if he's sure about that story. Sieg tells Gleeka he's just earned himself a gravestone, which has the kid desperately trying to beg for his life, but it's his mother who runs in screaming for Sieg to stop, insisting he can't just kill his own brother, because even in their cutthroat family, that's a forbidden rule. And Gleeka, seeing his out, gets cocky again, taunting Sieg that a badgeless loser can't touch him outside a formal duel, which just makes Sieg flash a truly sinister grin, asking if that means he can formally end him instead, then challenges him to a duel with the stolen badge on the line. Gleeka tries backing out, claiming he's just tired from the exam, but his own mother steps in, demanding he accept the challenge, telling him to show the power that killed an A-rank beast. Gleeka starts panicking, trying to tell her she's got it all wrong, but Sieg just grabs him by the face with a mana-infused hand, leaving the kid sputtering and completely helpless in his grip. Sieg reminds him this should be easy for an official exam passer, and Gleeka can barely stammer out that he won't do it, so Sieg just winds up for another devastating blow, and lands another brutal mana-charged punch right to the face. Gleeka's mother is just screaming for him to get up, as the entire crowd assumes Sieg has finally lost it, and even Belle watches on, worried for her young master. But Sieg's eyes are glowing with cold intent, fully aware of how this whole scene looks to everyone else. He knows that cornering a weakling like this is beneath him, but there's a much bigger game at play here, because he can't defeat his father yet and needs this opportunity. So he gives Gleeka a simple choice: duel him or die right now. And with no way out, Gleeka sputters out his acceptance. But just as Sieg's about to land another blow, his eyes go wide, because someone has suddenly appeared in the fountain between them. A green-haired student with a sword drawn tells him that's enough, completely catching Sieg off guard with his sudden arrival. He realizes he didn't even sense the guy approaching, and tries to remember who this impossibly fast student could be. Gleeka, still sputtering in the water, recognizes him as Helios, which seems to confuse even Sieg for a moment. Sieg asks Helios if he's here to play mediator, sensing no hostility, but Helios just says he's not that soft-hearted and has a question. Helios cuts right to the chase, asking Sieg if he's the one who really killed the A-rank beast, and Sieg just gives him a look that says everything without a word, which is all the confirmation Helios needs, so he turns his sword on Gleeka, calling him too incompetent to have ever won, then reveals he also passed the exam and will accept the duel in Gleeka's place, powering up with a massive surge of green energy, which genuinely catches Sieg off guard for a moment, as Helios formally challenges him to a real fight, and Sieg just smirks, suddenly finding this whole situation interesting. But Gleeka starts screaming that Helios is too dangerous for him to handle. Sieg smirks, thinking he doesn't care who it is as long as he gets that badge, and powers up his blue aura, ready for a real fight for once. He was getting pretty bored of dealing with weaklings anyway, taunting Helios to at least try and keep him entertained. Helios just tells him to bring it, and the two square off, auras flaring. But just as they're about to clash, Belle suddenly runs in to stop them, stepping right between the two fighters with a worried look. Sieg immediately shuts her down, coldly telling her to stay out of this. She tries to reason with him, explaining a duel for a badge has to be formal, but Sieg just dismisses the rules, saying they can do it right here. Helios actually agrees with Belle, noting that if they break the rules, they'll both be exiled, which just makes Sieg scoff at the pathetic bureaucracy, insulting someone named Gilgran, and that name immediately sets Helios off, who looks absolutely furious, his hand tightening on his sword as he calls Sieg out for the disrespect, declaring that our boy deserves to die 10,000 times for that insult alone. Sieg, of course, just gives him a smug little smirk, completely unimpressed. So they move the party to a more official venue, the blood-stained courtyard. It's a massive, torchlit arena that definitely lives up to its name, where Helios is already waiting in the center, his green aura flaring as Sieg calmly walks in to face him, with a very worried Belle trailing behind. Sieg steps into the arena, completely unfazed by the decor while Belle stands behind him, already looking terrified. He just scoffs at the idea of this being a formal place, as she starts begging him not to push himself too hard, explaining that Helios is one of the most powerful brothers, whose talent was recognized by their father at just 8 years old. This news, of course, just makes Sieg crack a confident smirk, but Belle has one more piece of crucial information, revealing Helios is known as the White Rose Reaper for his speed. She can only finish by pleading with him to please be careful. Sieg just scoffs at the White Rose Reaper nickname, saying he'll crush any rose, no matter the color, but then he notices the arena itself is starting to move, as massive spikes begin jutting out from the walls, and the entire floor rises into a proper deathmatch stage. He's actually pretty impressed they went all out for this, telling Helios to just get on with it already. Helios responds by powering up his intense green aura, asking Sieg if he's actually prepared to die here, which just gets a sarcastic comeback about him being dramatic and a new nickname if he loses. Helios is absolutely livid, vowing to silence Sieg for good, and as they face off, the other siblings start to murmur, wondering why Sieg would risk getting exiled over this fight. But the entire arena suddenly goes dead silent, because their father, Gilgran, has just appeared on the balcony. Helios is completely stunned to see the man himself, and the rest of the family is just as shocked by his arrival. An attendant calls for silence as the patriarch looks down, and Sieg just glares up, finally seeing the man he came for, while Helios immediately drops to one knee in deference. Gilgran smirks, telling them to show him what they've got, but Sieg knows this duel is just a stepping stone, a chance to finally expose his father's secrets. An attendant asks Gilgran to signal the start of the match, and the patriarch agrees, telling them to make it entertaining, before flicking a single drop of purple mana into the arena, which lands perfectly inside a ceremonial goblet on the floor, serving as the official signal for the duel to begin. Sieg just cracks a confident grin, ready to go, as Helios powers up his green aura, meeting his gaze. This moment the goblet shatters, the duel begins, and Helios instantly explodes with thorny green energy, lunging forward for a lightning-fast opening strike. Sieg just calmly notes he's going right for the neck, taunting him for trying to impress their father. Helios leaps into the air for another powerful attack, but Sieg meets the blow without a moment's delay, immediately launching a sweeping counterslash of his own. Helios is forced back as their swords finally clash, and Sieg just grins, mocking his obsession with necks. This crowd stares down at the arena, wondering what just happened, as they can't believe that's really Sieg down there. Because our boy is now glowing with a brilliant golden aura, easily holding back Helios's thorny green attacks, who furiously vows to shut Sieg's mouth for good. His other siblings are in absolute shock, realizing he has yellow mana, which means he's already reached mana level 4. Sieg's newfound power easily pushes Helios back, forcing the White Rose Reaper into a desperate retreat, but Sieg just keeps pressing the attack relentlessly. Sieg keeps up the pressure, his golden aura overwhelming Helios's defense, who can't believe the raw power coming from this supposed weakling. Their energies collide in a massive blast that sends Sieg flying back, but he just uses the force to create some distance, landing perfectly, crouching with his sword ready, completely composed after that exchange. He takes a moment to survey the deadly arena around them, admitting Helios has impressive mana control for his age, but a cocky smirk reveals he's far from impressed, as his own aura suddenly erupts with crackling purple lightning, leaving Helios and the entire audience absolutely speechless. Sieg just mocks Helios's entire fighting style, asking if he really thinks that'll work against another level 4 user, which sends the other siblings into a complete panic because they can't believe Sieg is at that level too. Up on the balcony, their father, Gilgran, watches the two auras clash, looking far more interested than surprised by this turn of events. And he smirks, realizing there's something more going on here, demanding to see the true power Sieg is hiding underneath. Meanwhile, Helios is completely rattled by the revelation, unable to understand how Sieg could have possibly reached that level. Helios can't believe it, asking if Sieg also received their father's blessing. But Sieg just looks back, completely clueless about any blessing, and asks what the hell he's even talking about. Helios just glares back, stewing in his own rage, refusing to accept this outcome because he's convinced he's the only one their father ever chose. So he unleashes his full power, thorny green vines wrapping around his sword, which shoot out towards Sieg, who just calls them gross tentacles. Helios is absolutely enraged by the disrespect, screaming as he launches the thorny attack to end this. Helios's thorny vines erupt across the arena, forcing Sieg to desperately dodge the relentless assault, as Bell can only watch in horror from the sidelines. Sieg manages to parry the attacks, but he's clearly on the back foot, and he realizes Helios has incredible mana control, using precise strikes, while his own power is just leaking out, burning way too fast. He knows he can't risk using his real sword style here, admitting to himself he might have underestimated this fight. But then he notices something familiar in Helios's technique, deciding to gamble by mimicking a Kiltia art to counter him. Helios starts taunting him, asking what's wrong, gloating that Sieg is already getting slow. He wonders aloud where all that momentum went as his thorny vines completely overwhelm Sieg, sending our boy flying back from the blast. Sieg lands hard but looks more annoyed than hurt, and then he just cracks a grin, looking up. Up on the balcony, Gilgran watches with a cold stare. Helios sees his father's disappointment, vowing that he's the only one who deserves that favor. Sieg just scoffs at Helios's obsession with their father, as his brother unleashes a final desperate wave of thorny vines, screaming that this is the end for him. This attack barrels down on Sieg, meant to finish him off for good. But our boy just gets this look in his eye, remembering something, flashing back to a time when he fought with pure, overwhelming force. He realizes that's how he's always done things, deciding to forget finesse and just let the power rip. Helios can only stare in disbelief at what happens next, because Sieg's raw aura just shatters the attack and sends him flying. Helios gets absolutely launched by the sheer force, and he can't even process what just hit him, as a pillar of golden light erupts from Sieg's spot, leaving Bell and the others completely stunned by the display. Even their father Gilgran seems to be taking this seriously now, while Sieg's aura continues to swell around his blade, transforming into a blazing inferno of gold and lightning. His siblings can only stare, shocked by the shape of his power, and Helios is just as lost, watching this unfold. Sieg just smirks, promising to prune every last one of his brother's thorns. Sieg's aura solidifies into a massive blade of light, leaving Helios completely stunned by this new form, as he can't even comprehend what he's looking at. Sieg just tells him to grit his teeth, ready to end this, and Helios can only stare, frozen in place. With a final look of determination, Sieg raises the energy sword, and Helios realizes there's no way he can block this. Sieg brings the colossal blade down with overwhelming force, slamming it directly into his brother's position, and the impact sends Helios flying as the crowd screams in shock. His other siblings are absolutely losing their minds over the raw power, and even Belle can only stare in shock at her young master. Helios picks himself up from the rubble, completely stunned by the attack, accusing Sieg of just mimicking his own shape-shifting technique. Sieg just smirks, telling him not to flatter himself. He's the hunter here, and that insult sends Helios into a silent, seething rage. His thorny green aura erupts once more, promising to show Sieg what a weed can do, and he screams for his brother to just try and stop him. A massive wave of thorny vines barrels across the arena, as the two brothers clash head-on in another explosive collision. Helios grits his teeth, struggling to hold back Sieg's relentless pressure, while Sieg just mocks him, calling him a stubborn weed that needs to be uprooted. With that, he unleashes another massive blade of pure golden energy, which absolutely shreds through Helios's thorny defenses, sending the White Rose Reaper flying back from the sheer force of the blast. Helios lands hard, clearly shaken by the overwhelming power, but still finds the energy to call Sieg's technique vulgar and artless. His gaze then drifts up to the balcony, looking for his father's approval, where Gilgran is watching the entire exchange with a cold, unreadable stare, and Helios can feel the weight of that silent judgment. Helios can feel his father's gaze shift away from him, realizing Gilgran is now focused entirely on Sieg, and that simple act of observation sends him spiraling, terrified that his father is abandoning him for his brother. He absolutely refuses to accept this outcome, insisting that he's the only special one in their father's eyes, this only one Gilgran should ever need. His obsession finally boils over as he screams that he's the only one worthy to be by his side, and a strange dark purple energy suddenly erupts from his chest, leaving Sieg completely baffled by this sudden twisted transformation. Helios is completely losing it, raving that he's the only one allowed to be with Gilgran, claiming he's the chosen one as his body twists with this dark new power, and Sieg just smirks, finally putting the pieces together about this so-called blessing. Meanwhile, Helios just screams their father's name like a broken record, completely consumed by his obsession for his lord. His thorny aura erupts again, but it's way more twisted and unstable this time. Wrapping himself in vines, he glares at Sieg with pure murder in his eyes, launching himself across the arena in a desperate all-out charge, and the two brothers collide in another massive explosion of power. Helios screams, pouring every last bit of his rage into the attack. Sieg struggles against the corrupted power, realizing this dark energy isn't even Helios's own, and it finally clicks. Their father has been experimenting on people, just like he did with that monster during the exam. As Helios continues to spiral out of control, Sieg just calls him pathetic for letting Gilgran sink his hooks so deep. Helios completely snaps at the insult, screaming that his father's expectations are his honor and strength. But Sieg just calmly tells him he's wrong, pointing out that Helios was skilled enough to succeed without ever needing their father's tainted power. Sieg tells Helios he had real potential but completely defiled it, and his brother just screams that he did it all for their father. So Sieg decides he's pruning every last one of those thorns, unleashing a final, overwhelming blast of golden power. This attack slams into Helios, ending the clash instantly, leaving Bell and the others completely stunned by the outcome. Sieg just tells his brother to clean himself up and try again, with Helios left totally broken on the arena floor. His other siblings can't even process that he actually won, as Gilgran silently looks down on the aftermath of the battle. Up on the balcony, Gilgran gets some polite praise for the show, but his face is pure, unfiltered disappointment. Sieg stands victorious, staring right up at his father, promising himself that Gilgran is the next one he's coming for. And somehow the old man seems to know exactly what he's thinking, looking down on the scene with a cold, calculating gaze. Sieg just stands over his brother's broken form, then casually walks over to the body, picking up the token that proves he passed the test. And with a final "see ya," he just leaves Helios there. Helios is still on the ground, muttering about his lord, completely broken as Sieg just looks down on him. He tells his brother to finally live his own life, adding one last insult for the road, when an official suddenly drops into the arena, congratulating Master Sieg on his induction. This man tells him to focus on recovery for now, but Sieg just tells him to mind his own business before stumbling, hit with the sudden backlash of overusing his mana, and the official just watches this happen, totally expecting it. Sieg finally collapses from the strain of the fight, his mind flashing back to a memory of him and Belle as kids, where she was always there to support him back then too, a constant, reassuring presence in his life. Back in the present, Belle catches him just in time, welcoming him back. 3 days pass after the duel, and Sieg is already back to work, digging through the family library, slamming another book shut in pure frustration. He's torn through every archive in the entire estate, but can't find a single damn clue about his father's power. Sieg knows he's finally at the starting line for his revenge, but he's completely stumped on where to even begin. Just then, 3 of his lovely brothers show up to bother him, and Sieg is already tired of this entire conversation. This ringleader heard he beat Helios by a fluke, so now they're here to test him, 3-on-1. Apparently beating the guy who beat Helios is a great way to climb the family ladder, so they all power up their mana for the ambush, screaming for him to just die already. And Sieg immediately shuts the leader up with a fist to the gut. This other two don't even last a second, getting dropped before they can even react, leaving the entire trio completely floored. Sieg just calls them weak and decides he's done, realizing this research is a total dead end. He'll just have to find a way to win head-on. He tells the brothers to clean up the mess, but just then, Belle finally finds him. After a quick awkward greeting from Sieg, she tells him their father has summoned him. Sieg thinks it's about damn time for the summons, his eyes glowing with cold determination. He throws open the doors to the main hall, knowing it's time to get closer to his father. Making his way down the long, imposing corridor, he spots a few of his other siblings up ahead. They immediately notice his approach, and one of them starts running his mouth about Sieg cheating. Sieg just walks right past the trash talk without a word, his gaze fixed on a much calmer-looking brother waiting for him. Sieg walks right past him, his focus on a much calmer-looking brother up ahead, and this one just watches him go, a little too thoughtfully, sensing that something about Sieg is completely different now, that he's not the same person they all used to know. Not that Sieg cares what any of them think, his mind already on the meeting with his father. He's finally led into the throne room, walking the long path to Gilgran, where an attendant offers some empty praise for his victory before getting straight to the point. Sieg has a direct order from the Lord himself, and our boy just smirks, telling them to spit it out already. This attendant lays out Sieg's first mission, a 6-month deployment to the frozen north, and Sieg immediately objects, thinking this was his chance to get close to his father. But the attendant clarifies he only promised direct orders, not physical proximity, leaving Sieg to realize he's been completely played, seeing this mission for what it is, a glorified exile. Then comes the real kicker. A ritual is planned at the ruins to boost Gilgran's power, and the word ritual immediately sets off alarm bells for Sieg. Turns out, Gilgran will be conveniently out of sight for the next 6 months preparing for it, so Sieg's job is to clear the area of monsters and threats before the big day. He's left to stew on this very convenient, very dangerous assignment. Sieg steals himself, ready to play his father's game, and Gilgran dangles the perfect bait, a promotion right to his side, asking if his son is smart enough to take the deal. This is exactly what Sieg wanted, a chance to get closer. This attendant adds that a team is already waiting for him on site, and though Sieg knows it's a trap, the terms are just too good to refuse. He accepts, vowing to make his father regret this decision, which is how he ends up on a carriage ride to the frozen north, getting dropped off in the middle of nowhere by the driver. And his new team immediately starts complaining about the cold. Sieg is immediately annoyed to find Belle tagged along for the ride, but she insists it's her duty as a maid to follow him, and after the driver drops them off with a warning, they're on their own. Belle is instantly amazed by the snowy world around them, even asking if she's sick because she can see her breath. With the ominous Historia ruins in the distance, they begin their march, pushing through the increasingly harsh blizzard, but all that initial energy from Belle quickly fades until she finally collapses from the sheer cold, forcing Sieg to warn her to control her breathing or her lungs will freeze. Seeing Belle is about to freeze solid, Sieg finally calls it a night, getting a fire going inside a small cave to wait out the storm. Belle is immediately back from the brink, absolutely thrilled to be warm, but Sieg just lectures her about underestimating the wilderness. She points out it's his first time too, except he's been here 12 times before. Curious about his huge bag, she finds it's packed with her own clothes, which she apparently brought so he wouldn't get cold. Sieg just grabs a cloak and tosses it over to her, telling her to get some sleep for their early start. This next day, they're right back on the march through the blizzard. While Belle sleeps soundly by the fire, Sieg knows she has no idea what's really out here, since this land is crawling with monsters in the Kurjik clan. He remembers them as a brutal group dealing in weapons and people, infamous for their cruelty and their horrifying masks. It finally clicks that they are the dangerous elements he was sent to eliminate. And just as he puts it all together, he senses a presence outside. Peeking out, he confirms they're not alone in the blizzard, just in time to see an arrow flying right at him, which he casually bats aside with a mana-infused hand. This arrow stops dead in the air, deflected by his mana, and Sieg realizes this isn't a monster attack at all, just as more attackers reveal themselves in the blizzard. A whole volley of glowing arrows rains down on his position, but he just casually weaves through the onslaught, closing the distance with terrifying speed. He immediately clocks their coordinated military movements, realizing this group actually knows how to fight, which is when he decides to stop playing around, blitzing forward in a flash of lightning, and appearing right in front of an archer with his blade at the man's throat. This archer instantly folds, begging Sieg to spare him. But Sieg realizes these guys aren't Kurjik clan since they have no masks, so he demands to know exactly who they are. This guy's fear vanishes, replaced with a smug grin. Turns out, they're from the same unit, and this was just a welcome party. Sieg is not even remotely amused by this explanation, just as a new voice praises his skills from a distance. A woman on horseback rides up, apologizing for her subordinate's little test, introducing herself as Captain Perrier, proud of his new unit, before welcoming him as their new disposable pawn. Captain Perry immediately starts talking down to Sieg, calling him a pawn, but he is not about to just bow his head to her, and she calls her brother pathetic for losing to someone like him, revealing she's the older sister of Helios, one of the guys Sieg floored. This new connection finally clicks for our boy, who smirks and asks if she's here for revenge, but she finds that ridiculous. She believes weakness is a sin, and her brother simply wasn't strong enough. Meanwhile, back in the cave, Belle finally starts to stir, waking up to find 2 of Perrier's soldiers standing over her. She completely freaks out as the soldiers just report her presence to their captain. Perrier immediately mocks Sieg for bringing a maid on a mission, while Belle is just confused to see the captain out here at all. With the whole squad now assembled, they begin their march, and Belle, all bundled up, asks what happened last night. Sieg just brushes it off, saying their escort simply arrived, though Belle can't help but notice Perrier's unique winter attire. This captain seems to overhear her comment, looking annoyed, and Sieg suddenly realizes something is very wrong, just as the ground violently cracks open beneath them, revealing a massive fissure splitting the entire landscape. This ground suddenly shatters as something massive erupts from the ice, revealing a giant monstrous snake bursting right in front of them. While Belle is absolutely terrified, Sieg is just annoyed a magic beast showed up already. Captain Perrier, however, thinks this is just perfect timing, a live fire test to see what the guy who beat her brother can do. She orders him to prove he's actually capable of something, but Sieg immediately questions why he should listen to her at all. Perrier pulls rank, threatening to send him home for insubordination if he refuses. With the snake lunging, Sieg is clearly pissed at her power trip, but he finally agrees, telling her to keep her eyes peeled. This giant snake lunges forward, forcing everyone to scatter, and Sieg immediately dodges the massive strike, weaving around its body without breaking a sweat. Perrier immediately starts mocking him for just dodging, calling him all talk, which gets Sieg to snap back, telling her to just stay put and watch him work. He faces the beast head-on, ready to make his move, leaping into the air and bringing his sword down hard. But the blade just bounces right off the snake's armored hide. Perrier smugly explains its scales are like titanium, asking what he'll do now. Sieg just sarcastically thanks her for the lecture, deciding to show her exactly what he can do, and blitzes right along the snake's massive body, a move Perrier recognizes as advanced mana control. She finally admits his special position wasn't just a fluke, as Sieg launches himself directly at the monster's head, landing a perfect strike right under its jaw. Perrier notes he hit the thinnest part of its armor, but immediately dismisses the attack as not enough, so Sieg just gets its attention for round 2. This snake recoils, clearly hurt by the hit, while Sieg drops back down to the ground, offering a completely insincere apology to the captain. Perrier is not amused, realizing he's testing her authority. She hops off her horse, ordering Belle to watch it, then immediately launches herself into the fight. Her spear charges up with a menacing red energy, and she slams it right into the beast's tough scales. Sieg just smirks, thanking her for the assist, as he powers up his own aura, declaring he'll take the finish. Sieg unleashes a massive lightning-infused strike, and just like that, the giant snake is taken down for good. Belle immediately rushes over, worried about her young master, asking if he's alright after that insane fight. He's fine, though his coat got shredded, sarcastically thanking her for the spares. Captain Perrier finally walks over, admitting he's quite capable. At least he's not just another disposable pawn, which does not sit well with Sieg. He tells her to just admit he's good, but she simply orders him to follow. Perrier gets back on her horse, promising to work him to the bone, but Sieg just scoffs, ready to steal all her glory. A woman named Hannah finds her companion staring off into the distance, and the rugged warrior seems a bit lost in his thoughts. She just smiles, calling him a strange one, before pointing out how odd it is that she can't see her breath in the cold. He explains it's because they're at an incredibly high altitude, where the air is too dry for their breath to condense visibly. Hannah is clearly impressed by his unexpected knowledge, but he gets flustered, admitting he just read it in her study. He quickly tries to brush it off, saying he'll stick to fighting, but she insists knowledge is its own strength, putting her faith in the sword saint, Chronogaius. With the giant snake out of the way, the unit begins its long march, and Sieg is already looking completely over this whole mission, especially with Captain Perrier leading the pack. Belle tries to make some small talk with her young master, pointing out how strangely quiet the landscape has become. He immediately shuts her down, reminding her this isn't a picnic. She can't shake the feeling, though, saying it's like time itself has stopped, and the cold is somehow even more biting than it was last night. Sieg explains that the snow is just absorbing all the sound, adding that while the clear sky is beautiful, it's also what makes this a land of death. Belle is still in awe of the beautiful but deadly landscape, which makes her wonder where Sieg picked up all his weather trivia. He flashes back to Hannah, who apparently knew a lot about the subject, getting lost in the memory for just a second, but he quickly snaps out of it when Belle calls his name. Their little chat is cut short by Captain Perrier, who has something more important to discuss, asking if they've ever heard of the Gruzik tribe. Belle has, and the memory is not a pleasant one. They're known for being ruthless. Perrier confirms these mountains are one of their bases, though it used to be a small one, but recently they've been gathering forces, and she's sure they've already been spotted. Belle is horrified, remembering the Gruzik tribe's brutal reputation, and Siege recalls their nasty business, but Perrier says they're not the target. He listens intently as she continues, explaining the tribe is after a legendary treasure, the great sword of Chronogaius. That name completely floors Sieg, who's visibly shocked to hear it, as Perrier recounts the legend of the Sword Saint and his weapon's lost twin blade. Our boy just stares, the weight of that name sinking in fast. Even Belle recognizes the name, whispering it in disbelief. Perrier confirms it's the same Chronogaius that Lord Gilgran personally defeated, adding that the feat of taking down two legends is still famous today. Sieg is still completely stunned by the mention of that name, while Perrier declares she wants that legendary blade for herself. She's not about to let the Gruzik tribe claim it first, a revelation that has Sieg dropping his canteen in shock. Perrier scoffs, wishing she could have fought Chrono instead, prompting a pretty inappropriate joke from one of her men. He then shares the only clue they have on the sword's location, a cryptic riddle about moonlight they've had for a whole year. This guy's so skeptical he's betting the sword doesn't even exist, but Sieg knows better. A sword like his is really out here. Turns out Sieg's been getting used to this body, his mana output growing stronger, and he decides right then that Chrono's sword is going to be his. His sudden intensity leaves the others totally baffled, just as a lone, masked figure appears in the snowy distance. This entire unit stops dead, staring at the newcomer, but Perrier just smirks, saying, "Speak of the devil." It's one of the Gruzik tribe, right on cue. Belle is completely terrified, thinking it's a monster, but Sieg calmly steps in front of her, telling her to stay put. He's actually grinning, realizing the Gruzik tribe is here to play. This masked tribesman flares his energy, lightning arcing around him, and he's not alone. More of his clan materialize from the blizzard. Perrier and Sieg watch as the numbers just keep growing, until their entire unit is completely surrounded by the Gruzik tribe. Belle is rightfully terrified by the sudden ambush, but Perrier is completely unfazed, saying this just saves them a walk. Sieg just smirks at their dramatic entrance, asking who's first, and calls out to the nearest warrior, ready for a fight. But a different, more imposing tribesman steps forward to answer the challenge, demanding to know the name of the boy who dares to stand against them. Sieg just smirks, calling the big guy a bandit playing knight, while the warrior, Sheik Proud, warns him not to run. Sieg gives him a simple choice: die now or spill everything about the greatsword. Sheik seems to consider the offer for a moment, before just turning his back and walking away without a word. Our boy is furious, yelling that he never gave him permission to leave. But Perrier stops him, telling him to forget cowards who flee the battlefield. She just smiles, pointing out the others are more than ready to fight. And sure enough, the rest of the tribe starts drawing their weapons. This whole clan powers up, lightning arcing around them as they prepare to attack. This Gruzic tribesmen just laugh, their lightning flaring up as Perrier's unit forms a defensive circle, completely outnumbered. Sieg, of course, is just smirking at the overwhelming odds, which is Belle terrified, but a soldier tells her to get back. Perrier takes her stance, seeing everyone's ready for a fight to the death, and she declares that the weak will simply be buried in the snow. With a roar, she orders her men to unleash everything they have, as her own aura explodes in a massive crimson flare. These two forces finally collide in a storm of steel and lightning, but the Gruzic leader just watches the chaos begin, totally unfazed. This Gruzic leader seems impressed, noting Perrier's unit lives up to its name, as the captain herself screams for her troops to charge, and the two forces immediately crash into a brutal melee. Perrier becomes a whirlwind of crimson energy, cutting a path through the tribesmen, which forces one of them to try and snipe her with an arrow, but she just laughs, totally unfazed by the attempt. She effortlessly blasts the projectiles out of the air with her own power, calling them barbarians for trying such a simple trick. Her overwhelming speed leaves the Gruzic warriors completely stunned, while Sieg just analyzes her, realizing her mana control is even better than his brother's. This Gruzic leader seems impressed by Captain Perrier's reputation, while her own men cheer her on like she's a rock star, and she's absolutely eating it up, demanding even more praise. Sieg just stares, wondering what is wrong with this woman, right before she puts her boot on a downed tribesman's head, and calls our boy out for just standing around watching. She offers some very personal motivation to get him moving, which he politely declines as his own aura begins to flare. He then unleashes a massive burst of golden energy from his sword, catching Perrier's eye as she realizes he can shape mana too. Sieg immediately puts his new skill to the test, blasting one of the tribesmen with a focused beam of energy which sends a whole chunk of their front line flying. Perrier is genuinely impressed by his pinpoint accuracy, and our boy just smirks, saying he'll be borrowing her trick. Her men are floored, realizing the kid copied her technique on the spot, leaving the captain herself completely speechless for a second. But a soldier's shout breaks the moment, warning of more incoming enemies. Turns out that first wave was just a scouting party, and Sieg immediately tells Perrier they need to retreat fast. Perrier just scoffs, asking if he's losing his nerve, but Sieg yells back this fight isn't their main objective, warning that her entire unit will get wiped out for nothing. His logic actually makes her pause, asking if he's holding back his mana, which completely catches our boy off guard. She points out that the technique he copied requires insane control, something even her own elite soldiers can't just pull off, correctly guessing his mana pool is too small for his skill level, and Sieg panics, trying to change the subject back to the enemy. Perrier just agrees to interrogate him about it later. She tells Sieg to just sit tight and watch from there, announcing she'll clean up the rest herself, which shocks him. Perrier immediately starts powering up, her crimson aura flaring, and one of her own men recognizes the technique she's prepping. Sieg is stunned, realizing she's pushing her mana to level 5, which has Belle and the others scrambling to get clear, as the sheer force of her energy cracks the ground. She then launches herself into the air, laughing maniacally, gloating that wiping out weaklings like this is simple, and declares this is how the strong fight before unleashing her attack. This Gruzic tribesmen are completely stunned by the sheer scale of her power, as Perrier just screams for all the insects to die, prompting a very unimpressed comment from Sieg about her lack of subtlety. Right before he feels the ground crack with a strange blue energy, he immediately tries to warn Perrier that something is wrong, but she unleashes her lightning spear hammer without a second thought, sending a massive shockwave of crimson energy through the enemy lines. Amidst the chaos, a new warrior smirks, declaring this the power of House Proud, but even she's shocked as the ground beneath them begins to shatter completely, and Sieg screams that the idiot just broke the ice they were all standing on. This new Gruzic warrior just watches the chaos unfold as the ground erupts in a massive fissure of blue energy, splitting the battlefield and swallowing everyone whole, and Sieg can only watch as they all plummet down. Belle and the remaining soldiers scream out in terror, watching their captain and the kid fall into the abyss. They're completely helpless, tumbling into the darkness below, leaving both sides staring down into the massive icy chasm. Perrier's men realize no one could survive a fall like that, while Belle just stares into the depths, calling for Sieg. As they plummet, Sieg calls Perrier an absolute idiot, saying anyone with half a brain saw that coming. She claims it was a tactical choice to wipe out the enemy, while he just taunts her for losing her temper over him. Their bickering stops short when Sieg notices something, pointing out that they're finally reaching the bottom. A strange blue light begins to glow from the depths, and Perry tells him to brace for a hard landing. Sieg just smirks, saying he's not about to screw this up, and immediately flares his own energy to soften the fall. Both of them unleash their auras, preparing to cushion the impact as Sieg's golden energy explodes outward in a massive flare, creating a powerful buffer just before he hits the ground. Perrier does the exact same thing with her crimson power, and the two forces slam into the bottom of the chasm, leaving them both standing, with Perrier already striking a pose. Sieg immediately calls her a muscle-brained maniac for the stunt, pointing out that for Helios's big sister she's surprisingly rough. She just dismisses his whining, saying they need to find a way out, and since climbing is impossible, their only option is to walk forward. Perrier decides they'll split up to scout the chasm, and Sieg agrees, telling her not to break the ground again. He asks what the signal should be, so she offers a creative solution, which our boy, completely deadpan, just accepts. With that sorted, they part ways down the massive icy canyon, leaving Sieg to investigate the strange new environment alone. He tests the walls, finding they're made of a bizarre material, so hard his blade can't even scratch it without a mana coating. He realizes this must be the Sleeping Serpent River, the location of the Gruzik's treasure, and just as he puts it together, a massive glowing sword appears right above him. Sieg barely has time to react before a voice commands his senses, as a masked Gruzik warrior appears out of nowhere, unimpressed by the kid's nerve for standing his ground. Sieg recognizes him instantly. It's the same guy who was watching from the cliffs and introduces himself as Sheik Proud, demanding answers. This warrior doesn't say a word, just lunges forward to attack, but Sieg doesn't even flinch, bracing for the impact. This name Proud stops the tribesman cold, recognizing it as a hated bloodline, so Sieg mocks him for talking about honor after running while his friends died, which clearly hits the nerve as the warrior glares back, hating his defiant eyes. Sieg glares, guessing the Proud clan is also after the greatsword, and demands to know everything about the legendary weapon. This warrior realizes this means Gilgran fears the sword, confusing Sieg, who gets told not to play dumb about the whole thing. This tribesman vows that after killing Gilgran, they'll wipe out Sieg's entire clan, then powers up, ready to settle this right here and now. Sieg is stunned by his conviction, realizing he actually believes it's possible, which means the sword must be connected to Gilgran's biggest secret. This completely changes things for our boy, who just wanted a stronger weapon, and with both their revenges on the line, he screams he won't let him have it. With everything on the line, they finally explode with power, launching themselves at each other across the ice. This tribesman leaps into the air for a downward slash, while Sieg meets him from below, shattering the ground. This warrior unleashes a flurry of attacks, but Sieg parries, their swords meeting in a flash of light. They lock eyes, neither one willing to give an inch, as their clashing energies tear the canyon apart. Sieg gets forced back, struggling against the warrior's strength, and realizes this guy's form is way better than the others. This warrior freezes, something about Sieg making him pause, baffled by the kid's eyes and the sword he's holding, but decides he'll just beat the answers out of him. Just as they're about to clash, the ground cracks again, and Sieg instantly blames Perrier for another dumb move. Turns out it's something way worse bursting from the ice, which the tribesman recognizes as an ancient magical beast. This makes Sieg realize his opponent knows exactly what's down here, so he calls out to him with a new idea, suggesting they take down the giant two-headed serpent first. This massive two-headed serpent roars, ready to attack them both, and after a tense moment, the masked warrior reluctantly agrees to the truce. He makes it crystal clear that once the beast is dead, Sieg is next. But our boy just smirks, completely unfazed by the death threat, telling him that works just fine. With their temporary alliance formed, the two rivals charge forward together, as the ancient beast lunges down to meet their assault. They both manage to leap onto its massive body, but the warrior's first strike just sparks off its armored scales. He's stunned by its toughness, realizing this thing is a purpose-built watchdog. As Sieg dodges, the warrior shouts a bizarre instruction at him, telling him to focus his mana and stare at the serpent's necks. Our boy is confused but does it anyway, his eyes flaring with power, and suddenly he can see a glowing purple stake embedded in the beast, a magical device clearly controlling the creature. Sieg realizes they need to find its owner to stop this, but his rival makes it clear the greatsword is his prize alone. With that, the masked warrior leaps onto the serpent's head, leaving Sieg to get blasted back by a powerful energy beam. He just smirks, realizing that since they're out of Gilgran's sight, he can finally go all out. Sieg's aura explodes, deciding it's time to stop playing around, since he can finally use his Kiltia swordsmanship at full power. He unleashes his fourth blade, manifesting a massive energy serpent, a technique that slams into the monster with a devastating impact. This masked warrior recognizes the style instantly, stunned a Proud could use it, while Sieg just keeps pouring on the pressure with his dark aura. His attack kicks up a massive cloud of steam and debris, but the beast blows it all away with a single roar, revealing it's not only fine, but has now grown a third head. Our boy is left stunned, realizing its scales are impossibly tough. Sieg realizes his current body can't handle his full mana output, forcing him to focus all his power into the tip of his blade for one perfect strike. Before he can move, the three-headed beast unleashes a massive energy beam, catching our boy completely off guard in the blast. He's thrown back by the sheer force of the attack, but when the smoke finally clears, he's still standing. He takes a breath, admitting that was way too close, then immediately glares at his ally, accusing him of aiming at him too. This masked warrior just scoffs at the accusation, reminding Sieg it's his own fault for dropping his guard against a sworn enemy. Sieg just smirks, daring his so-called ally to try that again, as the warrior notices our boy's sword glowing with a strange new power. He's baffled by the blue energy crackling around the blade, realizing Sieg is condensing his mana to an insane density, a feat that requires an impossible level of control. At the same time, the masked warrior is having his own problems, as his attack sparks uselessly off the serpent's armored scales. He's completely unable to pierce its hide, his glowing blade just grinding against the monster's teeth, leaving him stunned by the beast's impossible defense. This masked warrior is completely pinned, his blade useless against the serpent's jaw, and just as he's about to get crushed, Sieg blasts the monster's head, saving his rival's life, which leaves the warrior completely stunned by the assist. Sieg immediately asks him how to compress mana down to the blade, but his rival just scoffs, thinking the kid wants a favor for the save. He powers up his own blue aura, ready to prove a point, and unleashes another massive slash against the beast's head. This warrior boasts he never needed help to begin with, but Sieg just clarifies he wasn't saving him. He's demanding a lesson. Sieg is genuinely impressed, admitting his rival's technique is amazing, but the warrior just scoffs at the compliment, clearly thinking surprised the kid has a sharp tongue but still saved an enemy. It's Sieg's swordsmanship that really gets to him, reminding him of a powerful woman from his past. He shakes it off, thinking there's no way it could be connected, then starts lecturing Sieg on his flawed technique. Turns out, our boy is just swinging around raw, unfocused mana, and that kind of brute force is useless against specialized defenses. This warrior explains that mana has different forms, and Sieg needs to find his own. Sieg mulls over the idea of finding his own shape for his mana, while his rival complains about having to teach a proud anything, but Sieg just smirks, saying he never asked for a favor. This warrior tells him his clumsy mana is useless for precision anyway, and our boy actually seems to take the criticism to heart. He decides he'll give this whole personal style thing a try, which prompts the warrior to demand a demonstration on the spot. Sieg starts gathering his energy, his arm crackling with power, then unleashes a chaotic storm of red and black aura, realizing he doesn't have to hold back, just condense and release it all. Sieg decides he'll just tear through everything, unleashing a chaotic storm of raw, untamed energy, which quickly forms into 3 spectral serpent heads. He channels it all into his sword, preparing his 4th blade, this new snake blade, which leaves his rival speechless. With a furious look, Sieg lunges forward, blade glowing bright, launching himself directly at the monster's central head. This attack connects with a massive screen-shaking impact, and the masked warrior can only stare, realizing he broke the armor. Sieg drives his sword deeper into the beast's skull, roaring that he's not finished. His raw energy bores right into the serpent's head, tearing the beast apart from the inside out with pure force. This masked warrior realizes he slipped his mana past the scales, somehow controlling that wild power with impossible precision. This level of skill makes him question who Sieg really is, just as the other 2 heads move in for the kill. Sieg just smirks, thanking his rival for the good lesson, which leaves the warrior genuinely impressed by the kid's attitude. He's stunned by Sieg's power and his flexibility in a fight, admitting our boy is truly a vessel for the strong. His rival suddenly stops, asking our boy a single question, directly accusing him of being the legendary sword saint Chronogaius. Sieg is completely stunned, having no idea what he's talking about, as the warrior recounts a legend of a god resurrecting a vengeful soul. He points out that Sieg's movements aren't unskilled, just unaccustomed, as if the soul of Chronogaius is trapped inside his body, and he demands that Sieg give him an answer now. He presses again, asking how he obtained this new vessel, but Sieg just calls it impossible nonsense, clearly rattled, right before collapsing to the ground in sudden, unexplained pain. Sieg hits the ground hard, realizing his mana is completely drained, and he's struggling just to stay conscious at this point. His mind is racing, wondering how this guy could possibly know about Chrono, but the warrior just presses him, asking if he's playing dumb, or if this weakness is the price he paid for reincarnation. Sieg can only glare, thinking his rival is irritatingly sharp, knowing he absolutely cannot let his true identity be exposed. Just then, a loud cracking sound echoes from the defeated serpent, as the beast's corpse begins to shatter apart from the inside, unleashing a massive pillar of blue energy that engulfs the entire area. This serpent's final blast collapses the entire ice wall, and Sieg immediately panics, thinking another monster is coming, but the smoke clears to reveal a hidden path instead, where a massive, ominous greatsword is waiting for them. Both warriors are completely floored by what they're seeing, as the masked man recognizes it as Chronogaius' legendary blade. Turns out, it's one of 2 sibling swords from a master blacksmith, with one famously gifted to the Kiltia Empire and wielded by the Sword Saint. This second blade's location was a complete mystery, lost to time, until now, as the old prophecy about moonlight and blizzards comes true. This masked warrior recognizes the blade immediately. It's the twin to his own sword, realizing the serpent's defeat must have broken the seal hiding it here, and Sieg, still drained, knows his rival is about to claim the prize, thinking he absolutely has to get that sword for himself. But instead of moving, the warrior turns back to Sieg with a question, asking why Chronogaius would be seeking his own legendary greatsword. He admits he could just take Sieg out right now, but if they both want to destroy Gilgran, their goals align, leaving Sieg completely cornered by the interrogation. His rival then makes a surprising offer, saying he can have the sword. but only if he's ready to answer the question and prove who he truly is. Sieg is absolutely livid, but he's completely out of options, so after a tense silence, he finally gives in. Agreeing to the deal and starting toward the greatsword, he reaches the blade, which pulses with a dark, ominous energy, and for a moment he looks genuinely intimidated by its power. This masked warrior warns him to be prepared for what happens next, revealing the sword's name is Moonshadow, and it will test him. Sieg steels himself, knowing exactly what's on the line, then just says, "I know," and grabs the hilt as his own aura explodes. His rival simply watches, repeating that the blade, Getsuei, will now be his judge. Sieg takes a deep breath, preparing himself for the sword's judgment, and grabs the hilt as a dark, corrupting energy surges into him, instantly overwhelming him with a violent blast of red mana, forcing a scream from his lungs as the power takes hold. This masked warrior simply watches the trial unfold, as Sieg's mind is suddenly flooded with someone else's memories, showing him the face of his ultimate target, Gilgran. He's witnessing Chrono Gaia's final battle from a first-person view, watching the Sword Saint get overpowered and realizing this isn't his own memory, just the blade's unending, murderous grudge given form. This visions flooding his mind aren't his own, they belong to the sword. Its memory a single burning thought, an unforgivable hatred for Gilgran. This connection unleashes a violent storm of dark energy from the blade, while the masked warrior just watches the trial continue. Sieg struggles to stay upright as the sword's power tries to overwhelm him, gripping the hilt so tightly his own hand starts to bleed. But he refuses to let go, enduring the full force of its will. Instead of fighting it, he speaks to the blade, asking if it also hates Gilgran, then tells it he feels the exact same way. And in that moment, he sees the source of its rage, Gilgran standing over the fallen Chrono Gaius. Sieg accepts the sword's will, promising to destroy Gilgran in its place, and as he calls on its power, a massive wave of dark energy erupts from him. This masked warrior watches in stunned silence, but their moment is cut short by a sudden, violent tremor, as the two remaining heads of the serpent monster begin to rise again. His rival immediately realizes the beast was enchanted with necromancy, and he tells Sieg to stay out of it, preparing to finish the job himself. But a swirl of dark energy reveals Sieg stepping forward to intervene. Now wielding the greatsword, Sieg calmly says he'll handle this, explaining his new blade just woke up and wants to cut something, confirming he's its new master. His rival stares him down, waiting for an answer, but Sieg just tells him not to use that name, declaring he's not Chrono yet, just the man who will kill Gilgran. With that, his eyes glow with pure murderous intent, and he swings the massive greatsword with everything he has, unleashing a single devastating wave of dark power, which completely annihilates the two remaining serpent heads in an instant. This masked warrior just watches, dryly noting that our boy has zero chill, while Sieg smirks, admitting the power feels pretty good, as he gets a feel for his new legendary blade. Sieg is completely stunned as the greatsword dissolves into his arm, leaving nothing but a glowing red crescent mark on his hand. His rival explains that's just how Getsuei works. It appears when needed and hides when its job is done, and Sieg just glares, processing that his new weapon is now a part of him. With the test over, the warrior just waves and tells him good luck, which pisses Sieg off since he still has a million questions for the guy. This warrior just says their goal is the same, to take down Gilgran, finally giving his name, Shiratori, and promising they'll meet again. Sieg is left fuming, clearly not a fan of cryptic goodbyes, as Shiratori vanishes into the mist, leaving him completely alone. With his rival gone, Sieg just smirks at how dramatic the guy was, before finally letting the exhaustion wash over him and collapsing into the snow, completely spent. Meanwhile, in some distant ruin, a man on a throne senses a disturbance. It's Gilgran holding a strange glowing card, which just so happens to depict the very serpent Sieg destroyed. Looks like the big boss just lost one of his favorite pets. Sometime later, Sieg wakes up resting on something surprisingly soft, only to realize he's been using Perrier's lap as a pillow. She's just glad he's finally conscious, though she's not impressed when he asks why she's even there. Sieg wakes up in a cart to find Perrier and her crew watching over him, and she asks if he remembers what happened yesterday. He flashes back to the fight, realizing he passed out from mana exhaustion, as Perrier scolds him for pushing himself way too hard. She says she found an exit and tried to wake him, but he was completely out cold, explaining they heard the ice wall collapse and came running, only to find him unconscious in the snow. As he thanks her for the save, she tells him they're almost at the ruins, pointing out a dark energy leaking from the area, Gilgran's negative mana. With his target in sight, Sieg's eyes glow with murderous resolve. As they travel toward the ruins, Perrier suddenly senses trouble, and their path is immediately blocked by a new threat, a whole pack of demonic wolves corrupted by dark energy. This entire caravan grinds to a halt, completely surrounded, and Sieg, already fed up, prepares to fight them off himself. But Perrier quickly stops him, warning him not to waste his mana, explaining these beasts are corrupted and actually feed on magic. To prove her point, the wolves just devour a magic attack whole, which sends Belle into a full-blown panic as they close in. Sieg immediately shoves her behind him, telling her to stay back. Sieg immediately clashes with one of the demonic wolves, forcing Perrier to jump in and back him up with her spear. Ignoring her warning, he channels his mana into his blade and unleashes a powerful magic-infused slash at the beast. But the wolf just absorbs the entire attack, much to his shock, its dark aura flaring up as it feeds on his power. Sieg can feel his own mana being drained away instantly, earning him a sharp "I told you so" from Perrier. She explains the wolf's negative mana will drain him dry, and Sieg is left fuming about being stuck in a kid's body without his powers. Sieg recognizes this feeling instantly, realizing it's the exact same sensation he felt from Gilgran. Perry confirms it's the power of negative mana, meaning the secret to Gilgran's strength is just ahead. As he processes this, another corrupted wolf lunges at him, and he barely manages to block the attack, shocked that a mere beast could wield such power. But Perry immediately shuts that idea down, explaining only Gilgran has negative mana, which he uses for necromancy. Turns out Gilgran's ritual is leaking energy, corrupting everything nearby. Sieg asks how they're supposed to fight without magic, but Perrier just scoffs, saying these beasts are nothing as she charges her spear with a ridiculous amount of energy. She unleashes her flash-fire spear technique, driving it straight into the corrupted wolf's face, which tries to absorb the blast but gets completely overloaded. This attack vaporizes the beast in a single, massive explosion, and Sieg instantly recognizes that mana condensation from Shiratori. Turns out her plan was to just hit it too hard for it to eat, leaving Sieg wondering just how many more aces she has up her sleeve. Before they can recover, two colossal figures rise from the snow, revealing a pair of massive horned demons crackling with dark energy. Sieg and Perrier are completely stunned, dwarfed by the sheer scale of the threat, while the rest of the caravan starts to panic at the sight of the beasts. Perrier immediately identifies them as twin rock demons, monsters she thought were extinct, and her companion confirms they're legendary masters of the snowfields. To make matters worse, they're also shrouded in negative mana as one prepares to strike, smashing the ground with enough force to send the entire party flying. This caravan is thrown into chaos, with Belle screaming as she's tossed aside, and Sieg can only watch in fury as the demons close in on her. Perrier just yells for Sieg to handle one of the demons while she takes the other, and before he can even process that, the second monster is already on him, immediately swatting him away like he's nothing more than a fly. He gets back to his feet, furious that she just left him to die, knowing any normal magic will just get absorbed by its negative mana. But the demon doesn't give him a second to strategize, sending him flying again, and he crashes hard into the snow, completely outmatched in raw power. Realizing he doesn't have time to complain, his expression darkens, remembering he can't afford to fail here, not for his comrades and not for Hannah. With his resolve set, he focuses on the crescent mark on his hand, ready to call on his new sword. With no other choice, Sieg calls out his new weapon's name, channeling all his focus into the crescent mark on his hand. Dark energy erupts from him, forming into a familiar shape. This legendary greatsword Getsuei materializes in his grasp. He swings the massive blade straight at the rock demon, which tears directly through the monster's torso with ease. Sieg is stunned by the sheer destructive force he's wielding, as the demon is completely overwhelmed by the dark power. But just as he's processing the victory, he feels a change, and the sword begins to transform into a new, sleeker form. Sieg realizes Getsuei is actually devouring the demon's negative mana, this sword practically vibrating with a hunger for more power, and he turns to the second demon, asking if his new weapon is ready for another meal. With a grim smirk, he decides to let Getsuei feast, charging forward with a surge of dark, crackling energy. At the same time, Perrier lands a massive hit on her own demon, this impact shaking the entire battlefield. But her crew's relief is cut short when she lands, looking pissed. She's forced to admit the monster's raw power is insane, realizing her mana overload trick won't work on something this strong. Meanwhile, Perrier is completely stalled against her demon, but her fight is interrupted by a sudden, massive shock, because Sieg is just standing there, holding the other monster's arm. He casually tells her he's ready to take over now, leaving Perrier and Belle completely baffled as to how he won. Sieg just yells for Perrier to get her crew to safety, insisting he'll handle the rest of this himself. This remaining demon stares down at the kid who just took out its twin, its face glowing with absolute fury. But Sieg just taunts it, promising to send it to join its partner soon. Sieg smirks, revealing he learned a little something from the last kill, just as the enraged demon swings with everything it has. This sheer force of the blow sends Perrier and Belle flying, forcing her to scream for the entire crew to fall back immediately. But Sieg just launches himself straight into the attack's path, explaining that clashing positive and negative mana creates a massive explosion. He channels that volatile reaction into his blade, unleashing his Moon Shadow technique, and brings the supercharged Getsuei down on the demon's head. This impact is absolutely devastating, blowing a hole straight through the monster's core, leaving Sieg panting from the strain as his sword reverts to its base form. Sieg realizes the power he's wielding is absolutely insane, but he also knows he can't fully control it yet, and the sheer strain of the battle finally knocks him out. He wakes up sometime later, completely disoriented, with Perrier standing over him inside some kind of building. He struggles to figure out where they are, and she tells him they've finally reached the Historia ruins. Sieg takes in the ancient architecture around them as Perrier explains this is the birthplace of necromancy. Their mission is to secure this place for an upcoming ritual, a detail she expects him to know. Sieg reluctantly confirms he understands the mission, but Perrier immediately changes the subject to his combat skills, asking if he plans on passing out after every single battle. He tries to blame her for being slow, but she just ignores him, and then pats his head, condescendingly praising his performance. Sieg absolutely loses it, yelling at her not to treat him like a child, but their argument is cut short by a man in a uniform, who formally thanks Lord Sieg for completing his mission. He's then told to give his report directly to Lord Gilgran, and Sieg finally connects the dots. Belle and Perrier both work for him. Perrier looks completely over this whole situation, telling Sieg he's coming with her to report in. She leads him into a massive throne room, where she immediately kneels before Lord Gilgran. Gilgran confirms they've cleared out the local threats before turning his attention directly to Sieg. He asks if the kid actually contributed to the fight, and Sieg reluctantly admits that he did. Gilgran actually praises him for upholding the family's strength, leaving Belle completely stunned to hear it. Gilgran says he was just preparing for something called the Vessel Ritual, telling them to take a look as he unleashes a wave of dark energy. Both Sieg and Perrier are completely stunned by the sudden display, as the magic reveals a horrifying scene laid out before them. This entire hall is filled with countless bodies, all hanging upside down, a sight so grim that even Belle can't help but scream in terror. Gilgran then coldly tells Sieg he should recognize these people, revealing that every single one of them is one of his siblings. Even Perrier is shocked, horrified at what he's done to his own children, as Sieg recognizes one of the victims, his brother Helios. Belle is completely horrified, recognizing Sieg's brother Helios among the fallen, and even Perrier is stunned by Gilgran's absolute lack of remorse. Sieg can only stare in disbelief as the scene unfolds, watching as his brother's body is unceremoniously cut down, his life essence draining into a large basin for the ritual. One of Gilgran's subordinates calmly declares that they have enough, and Helios's lifeless form is dropped to the stone floor. Sieg's shock finally boils over into pure, unrestrained fury, calling his own father a monster right to his face. Gilgran just smirks, amused by the defiance and offering to spar again. Sieg is absolutely furious, but he knows he can't win a direct fight, so he forces himself to kneel, choking out an apology to his father. He's disgusted with himself for having to grovel before a man like him, but Gilgran just surrounds him with a threatening aura, clearly not buying the act. He mockingly compliments Sieg for finally learning his place, but before he can make a move, Belle draws her daggers, jumping between them and pleading for Lord Gilgran to stop. Sieg can only watch, stunned that she's actually protecting him, as she desperately tries to convince Gilgran he's learned his lesson. Gilgran, however, looks completely unimpressed by the interruption. Gilgran's dark energy suddenly erupts from the floor, completely ensnaring Belle for daring to get involved. He scoffs at a mere maid interrupting his fun and sentences her to pay for it with her life, but Sieg immediately throws up a defensive barrier, yelling for his father to let her go right now. Gilgran just finds it amusing that Sieg cares about someone else, a question that makes our boy absolutely livid. Seeing this, Gilgran decides to change the terms of their spar, promising to personally drain Belle's life for the ritual and telling Sieg to look forward to it. Sieg absolutely loses it, screaming that he won't let this happen, but Gilgran's overwhelming pressure slams him to the floor. He realizes in horror that his mana is completely drained, leaving him powerless as his father holds the unconscious Belle. Everything fades to black as Sieg finally collapses, his first thought being that he failed to protect her. But then he remembers there's still half a year until the ritual, and he makes a vow to take back everything that was stolen. He promises to save Belle, no matter the cost, and also remembers the others he has to save, like a girl named Hannah. Half a year later, Sieg is trekking through a frozen wasteland, all alone and clearly on a mission. He senses the negative mana growing stronger, which means the ritual is close, just as a massive swarm of monstrous snow spiders descends upon him. This creature's immediately charged, but he seems completely unfazed, effortlessly dodging the first lunge. He throws off his cloak with a grin, clearly fired up for this fight, and promises to make this quick. Sieg immediately unleashes his Moonshadow technique, channeling a massive wave of dark energy into the horde. His dark energy absolutely shreds through the spider swarm, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. He's just getting warmed up, readying another attack as more shadowy spikes erupt from the ground below. This remaining monsters are completely overwhelmed by the assault, so Sieg decides it's time for the finishing touch. He prepares a modified version of his family's swordsmanship, a technique he calls the Great Heron Wind. A massive bird of pure energy materializes and dives down, a testament to everything he's learned in the last 6 months. This energy bird completely annihilates the spider swarm, a clear sign of how much his mana control has improved, not to mention his sword's ability to devour energy. As the last of the monsters fall, his mind is already on his real target, promising to make the day of the ritual Gilgran's death anniversary.